Welcome back to Tampa City Council. At this time, can we have roll call?
Carlson?
Here.
Hurtak?
Here.
Clendenin? Henderson? Vieira? Miranda?
Here.
Maniscalco?
Here.
You have a physical quorum.
All right. Before we begin, just a reminder, we're going to have the 5-minute timer on per each council member as we do our discussions moving forward. Yes, sir. Mr. Rahara, item number 91.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Council. Dennis Rahara, Chief Financial Officer. Report on item number 91, the subject of city council salaries. We thought it would be informative if we kind of laid out a chronology of how we came to this point and some of the various city council salaries that were discussed. If you don't mind if I can go to the Elmo?
Go ahead, sir. If we get the overhead.
I cannot
active.
see it yet, yes. Please let me know when you see it. Oh. Thank you, sir.
There we go.
And you had it right there. Again, just a chronology. This request was informally made at a special call session in October of 2021, suggesting comparable cities to Tampa. Mrs. Pointer, who we discussed in creating this Elmo slide, provided some information later or early in 2022. And you see over to the far right in yellow the external jurisdictional analysis of approximately $74,000. Separate analysis internal was done, again, arriving at a very, very similar figure, almost $74,000 per council member. In the recommended budget for fiscal year 23, we appropriated an amount necessary to raise city council salaries to that number, to $73,713. It was not acted upon, and your salaries were not increased, but we retained that funding and carried it over into the current year in personnel reserves, which I'll speak to in just a moment. Had that effect, or had that pay increase gone into effect with City Council's upcoming 3% cost of living raise on May 1st, we have calculated a similar figure of $75,315. So from our perspective, from a mathematical perspective, that brings us to present day. Had this pay gone into effect along with your forthcoming 3% pay increase, we'd be at that number in yellow, $75,315. Where we are today, you see in the second to the last bullet, generally, city council members are making $55,000 in change. The exception is Councilman Miranda at $53,000 in change. But again, we have a little over $20,000 for each council seat in our personnel reserves, and you see the total there of just over $142,000. So again, wanted to level set as to the discussions that have taken place up to now and the funding scenario that exists right now. And we can answer additional questions or as council discusses the item.
Anybody want to kick it off? Councilmember Miranda.
Yeah, the only thing is, if I remember, there was a study done between cities, like Miami, St. Pete, Orlando, whatever it was. And when you do the comparison to those cities, it was very close. Am I correct?
Now, it depends. Honestly, I have seen 3 or 4, maybe even more studies, so it would depend on which particular study
I think
you're
the
referencing.
salaries range from 53 to right at 60, so within the range. But what you're talking about, a $20,000 a year raise or whatever. When you run for office, it's about public service. When you work on the boards, it's about public service. I have what I have because I worked 2 and 3 jobs my whole damn life. And I'm not opposed to doing that till the day I die, and maybe tomorrow. Or I might have lived another 30 or 40 years, who knows? So what I'm saying is, when you go to a drastic increase in salary, it should be voted upon by the citizens in the next election when you choose your elected officials. Let them debate, not that they're going to vote on the salary of the citizens, but let the people that are running for office do that themselves. I'm not opposed to a salary increase, never have been, when it's 3 and 4%, just like who? The general employees. I can say, I'm just speaking from my heart, not my wallet. It's just something that would rub the people now when you have so many people that don't have a place to live. So many people are trying to make it and they can't because of various things. Increase in insurance on the automobile, increase double in the housing. You can't buy a house now because you can't afford the insurance. You can make the payment maybe, but that insurance will eat you alive. And these are the things that worry me about the taxpayers. And I have spoke no one. I've spoke no one here. Excuse me. And I haven't even spoken to the citizens. I'm just saying from my heart, and my salary is the same as theirs. The only difference is I don't take that $200-some a month to spend as I want, and they're entitled to it, don't get me wrong. If I gotta go somewhere, I wanna pay for it myself. So does it make any difference for me who I am? No. I'm just one of 7, that's how I look at it. And I'm not opposed to anybody asking for whatever they want, but let it be for the next election. Give us the same percent that the general employees got. We are employees of the public, not of employees of ourselves. So the general public understands what it's about. And when you run for office, you know what the salary is. You know what the benefits are, or you should know. You know what if it's going to help anybody, it's going to help me. Because your retirement is based on the last 5 years of salary times the number of years of service plus 1.5% wise a year. So those are the things that I'm not bothered by it, but these numbers in my mind are way screwed out of line. It's just out of line. You get a regular employment, public and private enterprise doesn't do this. For instance, some of the salaries were raised, and some employees that were here 30 years, so they bring in somebody and go pay them the same salary, and that's happened. But now we bring it up, I'm bringing it up. I didn't want to bring this thing up, but it's just not the right thing. In anybody's mind, you're worth the $75,000, but that's not what you run for office for. You run for office because you want to serve the public and think that you can do a better job than the one that was there before you. And that's how it is. I'm not here to question you or anybody else what they do, but I cannot support a salary of that kind of increase. I can support a 3.5%, 4% raise like everybody else got. And if we didn't get it 2 years, give it away, all of us that didn't get it. There's no problem with me. I'm just one. I don't care what anybody says. Today's society, what's happening in St. Pete, what they got to deal with now, I don't think it should pass, but just me. And I'm not going to mention anything. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I believe in good government, and I think that in good government you have to pay people a living wage and a fair wage. I'm lucky that I have another job. Not everybody who runs for office has that ability to have some other way to supplement their income. We've had situations before where members of council would ask for free tickets and other things that they shouldn't have to do because of how little city council is paid. I think it's disrespectful to the position that the position is paid so low, especially in proportion to what the mayor gets paid and what the mayor's staff get paid. What you're doing is setting up a value as to what you think city council's worth, and we know what at least one previous administration thought about council. That's probably why it's artificially low. I think that even looking at what other cities get paid is not the right benchmark. We have to look at good government. There should be enough there that somebody could potentially work full-time or only work on this if they want. I philosophically believe in good government and believe in paying a fair wage. That's why I voted for this the last time. It did not pass then, but just so everybody knows, the mayor's chief of staff came and proposed it to us. I should have been suspicious at that point, but it didn't pass. And then in the campaign last year, the mayor helped raise $100,000 to run in negative ads against me to tell everybody that I had voted to give raise. Guess what? It didn't work. I still got 60% of the vote, even though I was outspent 7-1 by their people. And so to me, it's not a political issue, but what I'm looking at is how do we protect city councils in the future? In 3 years, I'm not going to be on city council anymore. And I want to make sure that city councils in the future are paid a fair wage. I'm not in favor of voting on just a raise for ourselves. I want to vote on a formula. If we vote on a formula that also affects us, if there's enough votes, I'm okay with that. But I want to vote on a formula so that in the future, no city council has to vote on this again. In the past, I've recommended a charter amendment, which was shot down. And the charter amendment was that every 3 years, a committee would be pulled together that would set the mayor's salary, and then the city council would be 60% of that. Of course, then the mayor's PR people pushed out that I thought we should get some kind of huge raise. It's not about me or this city council. It's about making sure that city council is populated with people who can maintain strong ethics. And we need a percentage. If somebody doesn't believe that we're worth 60% of whatever the mayor, I think 60% is a slight towards city council, that we're only worth 60% of the mayor. But it should at least be 40% or 50%. But if it is a percentage of what the mayor makes, then it will be a formula going forward. It could be in a charter amendment, or it could be something that we would put in an ordinance. But I think no city council should have to vote on this in the future. And so we ought to vote on a formula rather than just a number. Thank you.
Councilmember Clendenin.
I wasn't going to speak because I've spoken about it in the past, but just to state my position on it, any company does an evaluation based on the job and creates a salary expectation based on the job and the market demand. I believe the city did its due diligence. I've spoken with Chief Bennett and Dennis about this, what they did as far as their due diligence, doing the research to find exactly what an appropriate compensation level would be. I'm about, not just in this, but in every action we take on council, it's not about politics, it's not about anything other than just doing the right thing for the citizens of Tampa and the taxpayers of Tampa. I think that if folks that sit up here on the council, by projecting, and with all due respect, Councilman Miranda, by projecting, said, okay, we're not going to take it here. That's politics. It's either the job is worth X amount of money or it's not. It's worth that money today or it's worth that money tomorrow. It is what it is. I'm here. I'm willing to go with everybody about, let's determine what is an appropriate salary for this position, and then move forward with that. I think we should need to take out all of the extra noise. Again, I believe the administration, this wasn't us, the administration did an analysis, and they came up with these figures and this determination based on looking at different jurisdictions and doing these things. And I believe that Chief Bennett is kind of a subject matter expert on doing things like this. He's done it in his past lives, the things that he's done. I trust his math. And I don't want to get into manipulating it. I don't want to get into, well, maybe we should do this percentage or maybe we should do that percentage. Let's just stick with the facts. Let the facts take us to where we're going. And I think that's what we've got in front of us. Thank you.
Councilman Vieira.
Thank you very much. Yes, I don't think there's any really dispute from what I've heard from folks up here that this position should be paid more. I don't think that is an issue that is in dispute. For me, the principle is that there should be an election before a legislative body such as us gets the benefit of a non-inflation adjusted salary increase. That's it. That for me is the central issue that's here. It is a principle. It's not something that is political, and I appreciate everybody's comments on it, et cetera. I've made this very clear. We have and obviously it's not binding on City Council, but we have the 27th Amendment to the United States Constitution that says for Congress, they will not get the benefit of a pay increase until after they've had an election, right? It's good enough for Congress. I think that principle should be good enough for City Council. I am glad to vote in favor of a pay increase for the next Tampa City Council. You will get me saying yes to that 110%, but I cannot support something that is non-inflation adjusted, that benefits us before the people of this city have had a chance to speak on it through the political process. That is my principle that I have on this. Again, you push it to the next council, we vote yes on it, glad to do that, 110%. We do, and I would like that. And if this doesn't pass, by the way, you have my word that in whatever 2026, whenever it is, that I'll bring it up for the next city council. I will bring it up. You have my word right now, replay it, that if it doesn't pass today, I will, because people who run for that next seat should have the benefit of that promise. I think that's something that's very important. You're going to get more diverse people running for city council. You're going to get people from different walks of life, et cetera, running for city council. But I don't believe that we should get the benefit of that. That is, to me, the central dispositive issue here. That's the issue for me. Thank you.
That's what you said before the last.
Stop.
Mr. Chair. That's unacceptable.
So,
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
thank you. I actually, I was going to say that is exactly what you said before the last election. But I do have a question. I don't know if Chief Bennett is available to answer questions at this hour.
I do not know. He may be on electronically or virtually.
Well, if he is on electronically, that would be great. But in the meantime, Ms. Pointer is also mentioned on this, so I would like to call her up to answer a couple of questions.
Who?
Stephanie Pointer, Ms. Pointer.
Oh,
And the reason I'm asking you up is because Mr. Miranda asked about how we came up with these numbers, and since Chief Bennett is not available to explain how he came up with his numbers, I would just like you to explain very briefly how you came up with the external jurisdictional analysis that you have.
Good afternoon, Stephanie Pointer. I spent some time calling different cities, talking to people on the phone, sending emails. It was very nice for the city councils that had their own administrator, because those people answered me instantaneously, where you guys don't have your own person who takes over everybody. But I'm sorry if I can't, this thing's smarter than I am today. And I know you guys already have a copy of this, but I did not do that again because I have other things to do in life. But, and I called a couple places like Cleveland. Cleveland had actually went up significantly. St. Pete had went up significantly. I'm thinking $15,000 a year since 2 years ago. I think Cleveland went up to like the $96,000 range. So there were quite a few cities, but what I did was when I took all of this data together and then these were the averages, but what I actually did, and the sheets I gave you this morning, I gave these sheets to Olivia George, the pink ones that you have. So what I did was I just updated the information. And so the 2020, it was for FY22. That was the budget year that we were in. And the bottom line is that since that FY22, when we looked at FY24, people's salaries have went up $20,000 a year. These salaries here are for the top 4 or 5 people in each department, with the biggest departments in the city. Okay, and so what I did was I just took all those numbers and added them up and divided them by 8. And then I said, okay, city council's a part-time position. What is half of that? So that number, that number was $73,000 2 years ago. I'm not basing my information on anything but the data from what everybody else in the city is getting paid. Nobody's getting a 3% raise in the city of Tampa anymore. So this time we had a $20,000 increase for those folks that are on that list. So if you go from the white sheet to the pink sheet that I gave you this morning, that's why I made them different colors. It was $20,000 across, that's the average. And I just want you to do the math. If that's $20,000 for them, I don't understand why you have a $2,000 a year raise.
Thank you. That answers my question about the council salaries for
Thank you, and I
comparable cities.
apologize for the
Thank you.
outburst, I just couldn't, I couldn't stand it anymore.
And Mr. O'Hara, is he available, or?
I've texted, I've not heard back.
Okay, okay, thank you.
And may I, Mr. Chair?
Yes, yes,
Thank
go
you
ahead.
very much. And did you?
Wait,
Go ahead.
Councilmember Henderson.
You can respond.
John's here.
Should I go, Mr. Chair?
Wait,
Mr. Bennett's now available, so to answer my question. Chief Bennett, how are you today?
Doing well.
Good,
Thank
thank you. There was a question earlier about how you got to the number you got to, which I believe was 73,000 last year. And so all I'm asking is for an explanation of how you got to that number.
So after the informal request in October, we saw Mrs. Pointer's email in April. And then as we were preparing the budget, I had asked staff to do their own comparison analysis separate and apart from what Ms. Pointer did. And they arrived at the other number that Mr. O'Hara talked about, the 73,713, which was very close to what Ms. Pointer came. And what it did is part of it looked at the internal city salaries and then made a calculation based on the workload of council, which was essentially taking the median salary of city employees, doing a comparison to other cities in the state and making adjustments for population, Tampa being one of the largest, and then also putting a workload factor on that. And coincidentally or not, it came out very close to what Ms. Pointer came up with, which ended up being the budgeted amount in 2023 that was recommended and supported by the mayor at the time.
Thank you so much.
thank you. I'm gonna go to Councilmember Henderson because she hasn't spoken, then I'll go back around. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Being the educator that I am, I was the person that actually brought this up a couple of months ago regarding the salaries. At one time, I did assume that this was a part-time job. And to some degree it is, because you have the flexibility to decide on what it is that you can and cannot attend. The part that actually surprised me is that the community asked a lot of us in terms of events, and that was a big surprise to me. Sometimes these events are at no charge to us. Sometimes they are asking for funds to cover the cost of the expenses. Also, parking was another big surprise. And that actually doesn't bother me when I really want to support something. Aside from that, I believe that the salary is dated for the position that currently exists. I want to ask Mr. Herrera a question. The current council members, right now, the starting salary is $55,002.
Approximately, yes. Yes.
Approximately, okay, that's not true. Mine is about $3,000 less than that. So I just think that should also probably be something that's addressed. So 55,000 even is a surprise to me. When I brought this up, of course, my constituents reached out to me, and they feel as though I should not give myself a raise of this capacity. And I actually do agree with that. If it is for the next election cycle, I can understand that. That is fair, because it's not of a selfish nature in that way. I can be supportive of it for the next election cycle at this higher number. When I presented it, it was a little bit less than that, at a 15% increase, which took it around just a little bit over $60,000. It ranged between $6,000 and $7,000. A 40% increase is pretty significant. I just don't want to constantly get the feedback and the hits from the community because I gave myself a 40% raise. It is just a significant number, and I think that is unfair to our constituents because we did not make those decisions at the beginning of the budget year. So it is imperative that in this role, if we probably did a study of the possibility of who could work in this position, it is people with very supportive companies, or they work for themselves, or very supportive supervisors. I just happen to have a very supportive supervisor that allows me to work a flexible schedule, but everybody is not going to be in that position. And so it would tend to go toward someone who is from a two-income family possibly, or someone who works for themselves, or they have a very high income level job and they have flexibility to come to council. We should not pigeonhole the position to a certain type of person. Anyone should be able to run for office. And it should be representative, this body should be representative of, you know, what the community looks like. And so, in other words, in the boldness of saying it, District 5 should not be the only time a black person should be able to be on council, or a woman, because we're appointed, you know, or things like that, and then we run. We should have a very diverse body of people that are representative of our city and the people who make decisions. But I can't support 40% in one lump sum for myself, because there is some selfishness to that. However, I can see that the position, the actual scope of the job and the salary is not in alignment with the pay. It's just not. And so when the analysis was done by someone outside of the people who sit up here, that came from the actual staff. I didn't know if it was politicized or not. I don't understand why this position of voting for it for the next cycle, or the next election cycle, would have actually been the cycle where Alan Clendenin and I were elected. So this would have been the start of it. So I don't know why that decision wasn't made then, to take the selfishness out of that way. I wasn't up here for that, but I can support it for the next election cycle, because it is important to bring it in alignment with a livable wage, and that's all I'm going to say about it. But thank you for your time, Chair.
Anybody else, before I go to the second round? All right, Councilmember Vieira had his hand up first.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and I did want to comment on some of the comments that were made, and Ms. Pointer, I appreciate your statements after that, for regret or whatever. But I do want to speak, though, to the emotion surrounding this issue. It's easy for me to say to council members who had this issue used against them, let's disconnect the emotion from this issue. I appreciate that. I really do. I didn't have ads run against me on a vote on raising your salary, and that's very emotional. I get it 100%. So I think it's important to stipulate to that. I do want to make something very clear. Last council, we voted on a salary increase to go into effect immediately. I voted no, with the principle that we should vote for something for the next council. That was never presented. It was presented to take effect immediately, and that violated the principle that I stay here today. So there's no inconsistency there. I want to be very, very clear in that. My principle then is the same thing as it is now, which is if we vote on a non-inflation adjusted increase to our salary, there ought to first be an election. I said that last time, and I continue to say that today. Again, if this somehow doesn't pass, I'll be glad to make a motion for the next council. I'll be the one to do it if it doesn't pass. That's it. Thank you, and I appreciate everybody.
Councilman Miranda.
Thank you. I've heard something like the average income of a population of a city. Well, I can tell you that the other was looking to go into Cary, North Carolina, because University of Tampa is 26-2. I said, maybe they're going to make it to the World Series and win, and I want to be there. And as I'm scrolling through the things, I'm looking at the population that came up. I wasn't looking for it. They're about $8,000 an average increase in the salaries of the people who live in Cary, North Carolina, and Charlotte, North Carolina, than in Tampa, Florida. So we can't look at an increase in salary just on the population of a city. We must look at the income of that population within that city. And that's simple math. That's number one. Number two, I trained racehorses for 10 years. Very few people know that. I'm based in Cincinnati for 6 years, 6 months out of the year. I went to Cleveland many times. What I knew about Cleveland was that they had 2 aides and 1 council member. Maybe it's changed since then. And they had an office at City Hall and an office in the district. And if you look at the income of Cleveland, it's going like this, not like this. I'm not saying that's the cause, but salaries are one thing. I say it again, I'm not against salaries, but to support a $20,000 raise, as I'm sitting here on myself, it's not whether you deserve it or not. is that the people that you serve, not only in this city, in the whole country, in this United States of America, is suffering immensely. Immensely from not able to buy a house, immensely from can't afford the insurance on the house if they bought one, or the car, or the food increase has gone 23% the last year and a half. And I'm going to give myself a raise for $20,000? That was not the way I was raised in the Tampa Housing Authority projects. And I'm not ashamed to say that. So it's something that you take with you. I'm not opposed to anybody doing what they think is right. That's why they got elected. We have differences here all the time on any subject matters. But that's just me. That's the way I was raised. There's nothing about the job. I knew what the hell I was getting in when I got in it. I don't want to hear no excuses. You can call me anything you want. But I knew what the salary was. You know what? I've had 2 and 3 jobs my whole damn life. I've wiped toilets. I've done everything in the world you can think of. And I'm not ashamed to say it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Hurtak and then Carlson.
So so you're talking about how much people make in the city of Tampa, and you don't think it's very high. Ms. Feely, could you come and tell us what the area median income is currently for the city of Tampa?
I hope you're including sports.
Well, I mean, the only reason I bring this up is because we had it at the housing workshop, and it had increased significantly. Oh, no, it's like 71 or 80.
You got them, but
Councilman, I don't have it off the top. Abby Feely, Deputy Administrator, if you give me a couple minutes, I'll pull it up.
Okay.
I believe, I remember it was 79,000 something, but let me just get it a moment.
Well, the numbers just changed.
Wait, Council.
Yeah, while they're finding it, it's fine. I think Carlson was.
Yeah, maybe you'll take motions at the end, but what I would be willing to do is make a motion to set the city council salary at 50% of the mayor's salary starting on May 1st, 2027. So do you want me to make a motion later?
Wait. It's up.
Yeah, she seconded it.
You guys have a motion and a second. Yes, sir.
Justin Vasky, Legal Department. Before we complete this, I just want to remind you that section 6.06 of the charter allows salaries of city council members to be increased or decreased by resolution or ordinance approved by a majority of the city council members and then approved in writing by the mayor. So historically, how we've done this is a resolution which had the mayor's signature on it that would set out the parameters of the increase. We did this in 2008, where the increase happened at the next term of city council. So we have precedent of doing something similar to this. Thank you.
So his motion is in order, correct? Is what
But
you're
the-
saying.
and I would
An
clarify
ordinance
that,
would the ordinance would have to be approved by the mayor anyway, but if we don't have the super majority, then it wouldn't.
right, and it would be a resolution, but you would direct this legal staff to bring back a resolution with the increase.
The idea is to have something that would go on until somebody changed it, so that no city council would have to vote on this again.
How much does the mayor make?
Like 190?
Yeah, 190. Were you all able to find the number?
Yes, I was just
Okay.
provided by the Economic Development Portfolio. It's $71,089 is the median income in the city.
So it's right about here. So, Mr. Miranda, people actually have been doing better.
I'm happy for that.
All right,
I'll continue to work my 2 jobs.
Councilmember Clendenin.
Again, I'm not going to support anything other than the business model of following the analytics, evaluate what the position's worth, and take the vote. Any other manipulation by deferring, by changing formulas, by doing, is nothing more than just shallow politics. We need to, stand up and say, either support the study that was done by John Bennett and the administration and that's been presented here as facts, or just say no. I mean, it's because if you run a business, you set the salaries based on those analytics. You don't, it's not supposition, it's not politics, it's not deferral. The position is either worth it if it's not. I will stand shoulder to shoulder with you all, and I'm not pushing for this, because I've led a lucky life as well, so this is not something that really is important to me personally. I would support it because it's the right thing to do. I'll stand shoulder to shoulder with you. I'll take the political hits for taking the salary if that's what it takes, but we need to make an analytical, non-biased, black and white decision and screw the politics.
Yes, sir.
The mayor's salary is arbitrary as well. Just because Bennett presented it doesn't mean it's fact. You know, you can look at what other councils are making, but what we have to do is look at how we promote good government, and you have to look at the private sector and what people could do otherwise. I'm trying to make sure that in 3 years, when I'm not on council anymore, that we have good people. And probably some of you all will still be here, but I want to make sure that everybody is fairly paid. And I don't, just because we're comparing, it's like the economic numbers. If you don't compare to other cities, you don't know that you're failing. And just because other city councils aren't paying enough doesn't mean that we should condemn the future council not to get paid enough. I originally had proposed a charter amendment that would say that there would be a salary review committee that would set the mayor's salary, and then city council would be a percentage of that. Where did the mayor's salary come from? I mean, where's the analysis on that? We're not publicly discussing this. What we need to do is make sure that we have good government going forward. I don't care whether we approve this or not, but I'm not willing to approve just a dollar amount. I want to approve some kind of formula or some kind of process so that no city council has to decide this again. Thank you.
Councilmember Vieira, you had a question.
Yes, sir. I have a question for Councilman Carlson. If you were to make it, I see here the 73,000 and change mark with inflation adjustments until then, I'll second your motion if you want that.
He already has a second.
Oh, well, then
Councilmember Henderson.
I'll second it. You know, something on 50% of what the mayor, I don't want to support that. But if it's something that the study found and we defer it till 2027, binding for that council, 110% in support of that. Just to let you know, something, a formula, 50% of what the mayor has, again, that's not something I would support. But if you put it at this number with inflation adjustments for the next council, you got my vote.
All right, so we have a motion from Councilmember Carlson, second from Councilmember Henderson. Is the motion,
I would like to make an amendment to the motion.
go ahead.
I'd amend the motion to make the effective date May 5th for $73,713. And following up on that, task this council to put together, so 2024, to task this council to put together a work group to create a longer-term solution to setting salaries for a council, whether that be a charter amendment or a group that you just referred to, which I think is a brilliant idea. Again, take the politics out of it. And that this will give us some short-term relief and then a longer-term plan for having a more analytical way of setting salaries.
Yes,
Mr. Shelby.
Mr.
No,
Shelby.
I just want to know, there's been no second yet, and I don't want to.
I motion to amend, but no second yet.
Okay, so the question that I have, for you is what happens to the main motion that deals with?
That was-
You would cancel it out, replace it with
So
this.
you're.
No, the main motion, that motion would still stay in effect.
Yes.
But this would give us a short-term salary bump to get us to the 2027 date.
So it would amend that motion, and then you have to take up that main motion, is that what you're saying?
No, it would just be add-on, it'd be an additional, it would be basically a big run-on sentence. So it'd be Councilman Carlson's motion added on that effective May 5th, 2024.
In addition.
Correct.
So what you're saying is, you're amending his motion to add that effective May 5th of 2024.
Correct.
And the creation of the process for.
Correct.
Thank you.
And is that-
Now, is there a second to that is the question?
Yes, sir. Wait, is there a second to that amendment?
Doesn't he have to accept it?
No.
No.
What happens is if there's a second, you vote on the amendment, and if the amendment fails, then it is not accepted. If the amendment passes, then
Councilmember
it
Carlson.
becomes becomes the main motion on the floor.
So I know we'll vote in a second, but,
No, there's no second so far.
no, I said we'll vote in a second, in a minute. We'll vote in a minute. But, but I would vote, I'm just talking about my vote, not the motions. I would vote to support doing something in the interim if we can vote at the same time on a formula going forward. No, but you're saying that we would have that discussion sometime in the future. and so-
No. So,
State your name.
okay, state my name, Alan Clendon, Tampa City Council, District 1. So I accepted your motion and then added on that we have this interim process effective May 5th, 2024.
But then you said something else about the
Well, then,
future.
because you had talked, I said, I
Okay.
think in addition to all of that, I think we should pursue your issue of a charter amendment or something else, on top of all of that. I just said that in discussion, not part of my motion.
My motion was to,
Yeah.
no, my motion was to set on May 1st, 2027, to set the city council salary at 50% of the mayor's salary.
Okay.
And if you add to that, that you think we should raise the salary in the interim, I would.
May
vote-
5th, 2024.
I would vote to support that as long as the formula is there in the future so that city council doesn't have to vote on it in the future. If you think that we need to decide the formula later, then I would suggest that we defer this and vote on it another day so that we can create the formula.
And I'm willing to, let's maybe restate the motion to exactly what you just described. So except your motion added to the 713 of May 5th, 2024. Just simplified it that.
Can I just restate my motion? That
We need to
added?
get a second on this.
I'll second or accept it as an
Well,
amendment.
okay, now we need to have a motion, we need to have a vote on the amendment.
Wait, but it's tied to this other motion, so
That's
the other
correct.
part of
It's
the
a
motion.
motion to amend your initial motion
Okay.
by adding a provision that takes into account a salary adjustment on May 5th of 2024. I just want to make sure that we're all clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Chair, is there a possibility to separate
He
these
seconded
motions out? Well, he got a second. Did you give him a second on that?
You got a
I
second.
gave him a second.
All right.
So you withdraw your original second?
Yes. I just want to vote on what you said. I don't want it to be.
How you do that is vote against the amendment.
I understand how to vote, Mr. Clendon, and thank you.
Okay, anyways, we have a motion and a.
No, I understand, but you are seconding what he said to bring it up to date where we do give ourselves a 40% increase starting with this, in this current fiscal year.
So after we vote on the amendment, if it doesn't pass, then the original,
He never made a motion.
still stays.
Substitute a motion. You
Yeah,
had
it's
to
not a-
substitute a motion, not just-
May I do a point of order, if I may?
Go ahead, go ahead.
That's a suggestion, I misused point of order, may I, if I may? That why don't, may I?
Yes,
Thank
go
you, thank you, sir.
Handle this.
Why don't we just have all the substitutes and everything withdrawn, and Councilman Carlson, you have the input of your colleague, Councilman Clendenin. Maybe you restate the motion as succinct so we don't get lost in procedure.
Can we just do them as two separate motions then?
I
May I
actually asked
speak?
you that,
May I
Councilman
speak?
Carlson.
Yes, go ahead.
It's really not that complicated. So what we have on the floor is Councilman Carlson has a motion on the floor. I made one amendment. I mean, in parliamentary, you get 15 amendments to this thing. I made one amendment, one amendment to that motion. That was seconded. So now the proper procedure is for this council to vote on the amendment. That amendment will either pass or fail, and then if it fails, we revert back to the original amendment. And that's what original motion. That's the way this is, just, it's as simple as that.
Clear enough.
Now that it's all said and done.
Wait, your microphone, your microphone.
Exactly what they all are, so they can understand, so I can understand. I know the amendment comes before the vote, that
All
I
right,
said
just
earlier.
restate it and we're gonna go to a vote. and the
Point of
discussion
order,
is done.
can I say something before we do that? Because Mr. Clendenin insulted my intelligence during Women History Month, and he needs to address that right now by telling me apparently that I don't. And I do not appreciate it, and I can't let that go in the month of March. I do know how to vote, and there was clarification going on, and I do understand that, but do not insult my intelligence. I expect that apology right now. If you're not gonna give it, state so publicly.
There's a motion on the floor.
All right, we have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Carlson.
Thank you.
Roll call?
Clendenin,
Yes.
Henderson,
No.
Vieira,
No.
Miranda,
No.
Carlson,
Yes.
Persick,
Yes.
Maniscalco.
No.
Motion failed with Henderson, Vieira, Miranda, and Maniscalco voting no.
All right, now we go back to Carlson's original, Councilmember Carlson's original motion.
So the original motion is that as of May 1st, 2027, the city council salaries would be set annually at 50% of the mayor's salary.
We have a motion from Councilmember Carlson. Does your second still stand, Councilmember Henderson?
I did not know the mayor made $190,000 when I second that motion. That's how much he made.
Mr. O'Hara, do you know the exact number? It's right around that, isn't it?
It's approximately that. I don't know the exact number.
Okay. For 2027, I'll still stick with the second on that.
All right, we have a motion from Councilmember Carlson. This is for 2027. Second.
May 1st, 2027 is the new council.
Yes, sir.
So that's not, we're not, that's already.
Yeah, it's the next body. Councilmember Carlson with the motion, second from Councilmember Henderson. Roll call?
And may I have a comment on my?
Yes, sir.
vote? 10
Discussion,
seconds,
go
if I
ahead.
may. Thank you. Yeah, that again, by the time the mayor's making 190 or something now, by the time 27 rolls around, we're gonna have city council members making 6 figures. I do not support that. I would support, again, going to that number, which we've gotten through an objective analysis and having it for the next council. You do that, you got my vote. Thank you.
Councilmember Moran.
Just for the record, 60% of 190 is $114,000. And by the time you get to that date, you have another 3 or 4% or twice maybe of 3 times 12% more. So the council members will be making somewhere in excess of $120,000. That's what that means. Thank you very
The
much
motion,
mathematically.
this motion was for 50%.
50%,
It still
not
will be
60.
over 100 probably, but.
Yeah, it would be at what, 80? No, it'd be more than that. So 90.
But I mean, we haven't seen analysis as to how the mayor's salary was set either. I think for good government, and this won't affect me because I won't be here, but I think for good government, we need to pay people decent salaries. The mayor's staff are going to be paid $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 more than that.
Yes, Councilmember Hurtak.
I have a question for Councilman Vieira. What do you think about just taking city council salary and doubling it and having that be the mayor's salary?
I respectfully question the whole premise of your,
Well, I'm-
if I may, of your position. What the mayor makes is of no relevancy to what I think city council makes. We have here an analysis that was done. I'm willing to support that. You will get a yes vote from me. What the mayor makes is of no relevancy to my analysis on what city council should make, so.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion from Councilmember Carlson, second from Councilmember Henderson. Let's get a roll call vote.
Henderson,
Yes.
Vieira,
No.
Miranda,
No.
Carlson,
Yes.
Persick,
Yes.
Clendenin,
No.
Maniscalco.
No.
Motion failed with Vieira, Miranda, Clendenin, and Maniscalco voting no.
Yes.
Then I will, then, true to my word, I will make a motion then for the next city council. I'll do what Councilman Carlson's motion was, to begin at what this analysis said, which I guess would be $73,713, and for that to be binding on the next city council. Do I have a second?
Is there a second? We have a second from Councilmember Henderson. Yes, ma'am?
I would support that only if there's an amendment for an updated analysis at that time, because it won't be 73,000 in 3 years.
Yes, ma'am, you have my, that friendly amendment is accepted.
So we have a motion with that friendly amendment from Councilmember Hurtak. The motion is from Councilmember Vieira, second from Councilmember Henderson. Let's get a roll call vote.
I just say,
Yes, sir.
I know you just added in that amendment, but I don't want to vote for anything that doesn't have a specific formula. So if the formula is not the one I propose, I would want a specific formula, because by 3 years from now, the salaries are going to be up again, and it'll be a different situation. So I would like a formula, and I don't want the chief of staff doing it. I don't want to go into details, but a couple years ago, the chief of staff did a analysis of our aides, and I discovered that one of our aides was getting paid about 40–50% less than the others. And I said, why is that? And he gave me a long justification for why one aide should earn less than the other. And I thought that was despicable. And if I'm getting information like that, that means the chief of staff is using inaccurate information. We need to make sure that we're basing salaries on real information that's out there. We need to get some third party to do an analysis on what is best practices with the best cities, not cities that just happen to be out there, but the best cities that are run on this, and not have the administration do it.
Then I'm going to withdraw my amendment and go with his,
May I?
with what Councilman Carlson said,
Okay.
because I think he's right.
So I will remake my motion and let's see what happens. Again, to go with this analysis, which would be $75,315 for fiscal year '24, as was previously suggested, we can go back and look at what that number would be in inflation. This is a win for what we all say that we want, which is a higher pay for city council. It will be there for the next city council. Everything is there. What's that saying? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of pretty damn good. So there, and do I have a second?
We have a second? Yes, ma'am?
There, thank you.
We have a motion from Councilmember Vieira. We have a second from Councilmember Henderson. Roll call vote? Yes?
I'm confused. Does that include the,
Percentage.
no, the separate analysis?
So I'm going off what this analysis was.
Okay, so, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
We have a motion and we have a second. Let's get a roll call vote.
Yes, sir. Viera,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Carlson,
No.
Pertec,
No, because it doesn't have a
Clendenin,
analysis.
Clendenin,
Nope, take politics out of it.
Henderson,
Yes.
Maniscalco.
No.
Motion failed with Carlson, Pertec, Clendenin, and Maniscalco voting no.
All right, let's just move on. I mean, at this point, let's just move on. We can take up item number 62. All right, item number 62, Mr. O'Hara. And this falls under Councilmember Carlson's committee. We'll get to that later on. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Travis. This is for item 62.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Council. Nicole Travis, Administrator of Development and Economic Opportunity. Council, what's before you. Item 62 is a proposed amendment to the timing and phasing plan for the Rome Yard project that was previously approved in April of 2023. The land disposition agreement requires that the timing and phasing plan set out the proposed development schedule for that project. The developer is requesting an amendment to that timing and phasing plan. We've been working with them consistently over the last several weeks, and the developer has requested to make a presentation to you today to update you on that timing and phasing plan and to request your approval on this change. So if you may, Albert Milo with Related Group. Thank you.
Hello, sir. Please state your name. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Albert Milo, President of Related Urban. Thank you for the time to be able to present to council. As Nicole said, I just want to, update the council on the project and the progress that we've made to date and what the request is for a simple modification of the phasing and timing plan. How do I? Okay, thank you. So, quickly, as you know, many of you know, this is a public-private partnership between our company, the City of Tampa, and some of our local partners, Tampa Housing Authority, the West Tampa CDC, Tampa CDC, Ducon Construction, who you heard from earlier, and some of our other partners here that are on the screen. The project parcels, on Rome Yards is basically two parcels, what I would refer to as the north parcel and the south parcel. And what we're here today to talk about is just inverting the phasing plan, because in our due diligence and our work with that, the north parcel actually has some environmental challenges and infrastructure challenges, and so that's the reason why we want to invert the phasing plan from the southern parcel and actually start on the northern parcel. Here's just the overall plan. The plan hasn't changed. 954 units of mixed income housing. We have, affordable units, workforce housing units, market rate units, and for sale units, along with retail, a cultural center, a workforce training center, and live work units in the project. What we're proposing is, and we kept the same numeration of the phases. We didn't want to change that, so we didn't have to, confuse everyone. So what we're saying is phase 3A is still going to be, referred to as phase 3A, but it's going to be the first phase that we want to start the construction with. So you see the location of the phase there, where it's at. It's right between those dotted black lines are all of the major infrastructure components that run through that site. So we had to configure our building and our parking garage to make sure that we weren't in conflict with any of that infrastructure. As you see, full mixed income, we have affordable workforce, market rate units. The workforce training center, which was always part of phase 3A, will remain in there. So since phase 3A is gonna get built first, it's gonna be built sooner in the project along with live work units. I talked a little bit about some of the infrastructure and environmental challenges. Again, just to keep it brief, I know in a nutshell, that site, since it was the previous public works site for the city for a long time, it does have both groundwater contamination and soil contamination. And as I mentioned before, it has a lot of the large infrastructure, not just the typical infrastructure that you would use to service the development. It's major infrastructure that services other parts of the city. So the environmental remediation and the infrastructure, they're joined at the hip. They got to be done together because you can't mess with infrastructure underneath soil that's contaminated. So we're already in our permitting for that infrastructure. We expect our permit from the city in the next couple of weeks, and we're already in for all of our environmental approvals. We actually started the groundwater monitoring yesterday on the site, so we will have those results shortly also. Just some of the progress to date, we've secured our $64 million in tax-exempt financing from the Hillsborough County HFA. I just talked about the environmental challenges earlier. As I mentioned, we have that's our demo infrastructure permit with the city of Tampa. So that's already in the works. We have our lease agreement with the West Tampa CDC, and Tampa CDC is gonna run the workforce training program that'll happen on the ground floor of that phase. We have our agreement with Ducon Construction. You heard from them earlier, they're going to be working on the Section 3 component to make sure that we have those right Section 3 subs, but in addition to that, they are going to be the general contractor of record for a component of the site, the home ownership component. The first phase, 3A, is already in design development level, and we've got our insurance approvals from the city of Tampa. The proposed change in the request is to do the financial closing by December of this year for phase 3A. You see the numeration, again, we kept the numeration the same, but it's just changing the start and completion dates on that phase. We will be starting now in May, actually, all of the pre-work that we have to do to get the environmental clearance so we are able to close on our financing. We need to get that environmental clean bill of health, if you will. And that you're gonna see that activity is gonna start sometime in May as soon as we get our final approvals. Here's just some renderings of the townhomes. Those are the portion of the site that faces, it's on the west on Rome Ave, that, along the portion of the site that faces the single family homes. Here are some of the different amenities that are part of our, the different developments that we do, so give you a little bit of an idea of the different components that we're going to include in the redevelopment. Here's actually a picture of, as part of the development, we were in our agreement, we're supposed to do and work with the city on the extension of the river walk in that portion, coming from the east going west all the way to Rome Avenue. So the idea was to activate that river walk extension there. some of the community benefits, you know, was mentioned earlier that we do have a community benefits agreement. Again, I talked about it earlier. We have an agreement to do the workforce training with the 2 CDCs of Tampa. We actually have a 40% local hiring commitment and a 40% minority contracting commitment in our LDA. So it's a little bit more robust than, you know, some of the dialogue that was I heard earlier here in the chambers. We are going to be creating micro retail just to give small businesses a lot of opportunities to start there. And we also have in our community benefits agreement the requirement to set aside retail rates at a 10% discount. All of that's in our agreement. Nothing is being changed on that. Again, some of the economic benefits of the deal, as I mentioned, 954 units in the West Tampa area, 30,000 square feet of retail, 24,000 square feet of community space. The total build out will create an economic impact of over $400 million, $425 million. And more importantly, there is a revenue share mechanism in our development agreement, both for capitalized lease payments that happen to the city at financial closing and a revenue share that happened to the life of the project for the whole 99 years. So this is an opportunity not just to create housing and create economic development, but more importantly, also to create long-term revenues for the city to share in the upside of that. And that's something that then city council can use to fund other priorities that the council may determine there. And here's a actual rendering of phase 3A, the first phase that we're going to build. So there you see exactly what's being permitted there. And that, so thank you for your time, and I'll take any questions the council may have.
Councilmember Hurtak, you had your microphone.
Thank you. This is not related to this, but sort of. So you said that there's 40% of MBE participation. What's the percentage of Black business-owned enterprises?
Well, so we're going to make a big effort on that part, but you know, in a government contract, you can't state it like that. But obviously, that's a big emphasis of ours. That's why we're working with, you know, the CDCs and Ducon Construction to emphasize as much Black subcontractor participation as possible.
Do you have a goal?
Our goal is 40%, but we can't, you know, we can't stipulate it as such in the contract.
Okay, so 40% MBE, but not.
Of FB, Section 3, WMB, you know, so
Okay,
all
so
the different
40% all told. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Carlson.
Yeah, could I just ask a question of legal? Is there somebody from legal here real fast? As you're coming up, I would just like since there have been concerns about this project before, I just wanted to ask for the record, has the mayor or anybody on her staff disclosed any kind of conflict of interest on this project or related to this project? Any kind of
not to my
family or
knowledge.
relationships related to this project?
Not to my knowledge, but again, I have only been involved in this project for a couple of years.
Okay, yeah, I would
not
just
to my
ask anybody
knowledge.
from legal who's watching if there's any kind of disclosure from somebody on the city council has to disclose our conflicts every week, but if there's anybody on the administration side that has a conflict of interest, it would be nice to disclose it publicly so that the public can know and be aware of it. Thank you. That's all I have. I appreciate you coming up. I just want to say also to the related folks, I appreciate you all coming here. I think you all volunteered to give this presentation. You gave me a briefing. I think you're going to give my colleagues a briefing. You all are investing a lot in this community in lots of ways. Not all of it is popular, but you have made huge investments. You had a big imprint on this community so far. And whatever the other chatter is out there, I appreciate you all trying to step forward and provide additional information and transparency on this, because we need more transparency like this. Can I just ask you one question on the remediation? Who pays for it? Does the city pay for that, or do you all pay for it? And was that in your original agreement?
It's part of our development costs and plan. That's why we're starting it actually pre-closing, because we have to get that clean bill.
Was that something you all knew of and anticipated in the deal, or is that
So we
something
knew that there was a previous public works yard, so there was the idea that there could be. The city did do some other remediation on another portion of the north lot, but as we continued to do the digging, there was still some other remnants.
But you think it's, however the deal is written, you think it's fair that whatever part of it you all have to pay, you think that's fair at this point, or?
It's kind of how the agreement
Okay.
was stipulated.
All right, thank you all.
Councilmember Miranda.
I just want to say thank you for being straightforward and to the point, and let's get on with the show. Muchísimas gracias por todo.
Councilmember Henderson, yes, ma'am.
You want to say something, Mr. Milo?
No, thank you.
Well, I'm excited, you know, it just happens to be in District 5, and I appreciate the conversations that we had about it. I know that you are sincere in your approach, especially when it comes to minority participation. Wouldn't you be considered a minority yourself? I just wanted to point that out. I know you've come a long way, but you started from the bottom, now you're here. So just thank you for all of the thoughtfulness that you've put into this. I can't wait for, you know, what's to come.
Councilmember Clendenin.
Kind of a little echoing in what my colleagues have said. It's a transformational project, and I think you're modest with the economic impact that this project is going to have on not just West Tampa, but the entire city of Tampa. It is, you know, what we see in other areas of the town. This is an area that was, especially the specific piece of property, was underutilized and wasn't the best use of property. This is going to change not just the city of Tampa, but people's lives. I think some of the community amenities that you have, workforce development, and the other, it was news to me about your subsidized business micro models. I think that's amazing to be able to do that for residents and give people opportunities to be entrepreneurs. You know, this is, you know, part of a master plan of we transform and accommodate, you know, the growing needs of Tampa. And I appreciate your company's willingness to work in cooperation with all the other interest groups that you have, working with the West Tampa group and working with all of the nonprofits and everybody that you partnered with. I think this is a nice project. I'm looking forward to it coming out of the ground and starting to go vertical. And I look forward to the day that it's 100% complete and we've changed an important area of Tampa.
Councilmember Vieira.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I wanted to echo what everyone's saying, that you all obviously do a great job, and this is something that's transformational. I do want to point out, has no bearing or relevancy on you guys whatsoever, but with Tampa Fire Station 9 on West Chestnut, that we are moving the fleet maintenance facility out of there and putting it elsewhere so that we can potentially expand that fire station's reach. I would hope so. For additional service, because when we look at all of these additional units and all of these folks moving into Tampa, guess what? They're going to need firefighters and they're going to need cops, right? Just like we all do. So this is 100% wonderful, but that's why I've been talking about for years a public safety master plan, because as we build these big, and it's an advancement. This is a wonderful thing for the city of Tampa. We got to make sure that we have the corresponding infrastructure, public safety infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, et cetera, for these folks who are going to be coming into Tampa and are going to be moving here. And that is especially relevant, I would think, for Station 9. So I hope that we continue to see movement on that. But again, just wanted to say this is a wonderful thing and just great work that you all should be very proud of. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Carlson, would you like to move this? This is under your committee, I
So
believe. We have a motion from Councilmember Carlson, second from Councilmember Vieira. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you, and just, no, I think I'm good. So thank you all, but also be looking out in your emails. We are gonna be putting together an invite for all the council to come for the groundbreaking event there sometime in May, so be on the lookout for that. Thank you.
If you take 275 to the airport, you'll get there quicker.
No, I'm
than
good,
Kennedy.
I'm good.
Yeah, just real fast, thank you again for volunteering to do this, and anytime you all have an update, I think we would all love to have you on the calendar, because this is a project that's very important in the
Yeah,
community.
so
Thank you.
maybe what we could do is, provide regular, we'll come and maybe quarterly type update or something, and, and come just as a regular thing and update council, just so you're aware of that.
Good luck making your flight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is item number 92. This is Fair Oaks. Hello. Mr. Mulkey, by the way, let me start by saying thank you very much. You were so responsive on Saturday when I bumped into you at Vila Brothers with some community concerns. I've never seen anybody move that quick, and I just want to publicly acknowledge that. Thank you so much. I mean, I've never seen anybody move like that, so thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And
my pleasure.
While I was at home sick, and while he was emailing, talking to you, he was emailing me, and so that was a very quick response to a community concern.
Thank you very much, sir. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Council. Tony Mulkey, Director of Parks and Recreation. I am pleased to be here to present the East Tampa Fair Oaks Recreation Complex to both you and the community for second reading and consideration. This project has evolved a lot since it was initially kind of visioned. I found history of efforts out at this site from all the way back to 2009. And here we are 15 years later, ready to have an action on this, hopefully. The project evolved from the renovation of a small neighborhood community center into the expanded hub that we're considering here today that's going to serve a wider swath of the community. The project has had a lot of feedback, and I know everyone has heard from the community and everybody about how this project will proceed, and we've heard the same feedback. But one of the things that I really bump on when approaching a project like this is the history, and the history of the residents who have grown up here, who have developed, who have had those social connections through that park space throughout the years. Whether it was them being coached by someone and then turning around and coaching the youth of the community further down the road. I think that this project is day one of a future generation of doing that and continued generations throughout the community. So I'm pleased to present the contract for construction for consideration. If you have any questions, the whole team is here to address anything.
Thank you very much. I have questions and comments. First, thank you very much. It's a beautiful design. It is a major historic investment in this community. And they deserve it 100 times over. Because we have built beautiful parks throughout the city. Julian Lane / Riverfront Park. McFarland Park, where my wife likes to go. Actually, she likes to go to Villa Brothers Park more. We've made improvements at McFarland Park in the playground, Villa Brothers, Julian Lane, Curtis Sixon. Either I was a part of that on council or I was at the ribbon cutting. Curtis Sixon was before my time. But this part of the community has really, it's really been ignored and forgotten, and it's a dense, residential, rich community. This is a very expensive park. Julian Lane was $36 million, and I supported that. Curtis Sixon before that, back in the day, I think was $10, $11 million. I don't remember, but it's completely different from what this is. I spoke briefly with Mr. O'Hara. I read what the Tampa Bay Times editorial board wrote. I've spoken with members of the community. I've called folks, they've called me, and there are some concerns. First, there's a lot of support, number one. The concerns that were brought to my attention, they were brought up earlier today by TOBA and other groups, is the minority participation. If this is in a community that is, you could say, predominantly African American, I want to see us invest as much. We have a member of the audience today who discussed her business and the benefits of that, and that's a beautiful, perfect example, but I want to increase that. I think if we're investing, and this is the sticker price here, $34.6 million, that's not including the bonding, the interest, and everything else, that we should invest as much as possible and increase those numbers and investing with local contractors, local businesses. And as somebody told me last night, I talked to so many people, and somebody said, wouldn't it be wonderful if you have a young man or a father or a mother say, I helped build that. My dad did that. I mean, the amount of pride that they would have in that, I think that's very important. Again, this is a historic investment. I think it's worthy. I know we bond a lot of things, and bonding is expensive. And I have questions to Mr. O'Hara about how we can save money on the interest. Why should we be bonding the entire amount? What other options do we have? I'm just trying to save the taxpayer money, because the more you bond, the more interest you pay. And that's really it. I had ideas that I've been throwing around for the last few days. Where could we get the money from? I respectfully borrowed an idea from Councilmember Hurtak when she said months ago, why doesn't the CRA, different board, why didn't the CRA buy the police station across the street? The administration responded with, they're not interested in doing that at this time. And I was looking at, per the idea of Councilmember Hurtak, how do we free up money in that downtown CRA that we can use to move out of Tampa Police, go somewhere else, whatever the point is, how can we free up that cash and put it in the general fund? And I'm just trying to think outside the box and looking at where we can get other monies that we can apply to this. I spoke with somebody else yesterday, said, you can bond it, and you can always pay it down early. A question I have is if the CIT money is renewed, because as of yesterday, I talked to somebody down the street at County Commission, and they're in discussions. Could we use CIT money, if it's renewed, to pay these bonds down? Do we bond everything all at once? Are we bonding $34 million plus all at once? Typically, no. Again, I'm just trying to get the best bang for our buck without cutting corners, without delaying the project. I want to see this come to fruition, but I also want to be a good steward of the taxpayer dollars and save the city money and not burden the next council, the next mayor, because, yes, we bond a lot. What if we go into a recession? What if the CIT doesn't get renewed? Last budget was proposing a millage increase. What about our reserves? What about our credit rating? So many questions that I would like answers to. And I think that's about, I could keep going, but it's a worthy project. It's a great project. I just want to do good by the community and get the maximum benefit possible. You don't have to answer right now. I'm going to go to the other council members, but Councilmember Carlson had his mic on first, and then we'll continue.
Yeah, last time we talked about this, I showed the articles as to my involvement, and I had to show my involvement because there have been some operators on behalf of the administration out there spreading misinformation. And the bottom line is that the mayor wanted to spend a couple $100,000 to renovate a building. City council, as a CRA, went out and we suggested building a new building because many of the folks that are in the audience today asked us to do that. I didn't know about the situation at Fair Oaks until Mr. Robinson, Bishop Patty, and many others came before us and said that we should do something. So we held a meeting there, which former Councilmember Citro mentioned, and at the meeting, you guys can watch the video. The members of the committee booed the mayor and asked us to build a new building. So we did. I made motions to do that and started suggesting it. The administration decided to one-up city council and came back a few months later with 18 million. And then they decided, I guess, to one-up themselves and proposed 41 million, of which we're getting 36 today. The problem is not, I say all that because the problem is not that I don't support Fair Oaks. I 100% support the community. I think the community deserves it. We need to have something there. The problem is I don't support this contract. There was no RFP on this contract. There was an RFQ. That's not enough for the community on a $108 million project. It's ridiculous that we're not having RFPs. We should have had the pricing of this step out, and I still have questions about how it's being handled. It's going to be bonded, which means it's going to have a huge amount of money there. The public doesn't want us to bond things. We were already at 41% bonding capacity a few months ago, and now we're going to bond more and more and more things. Everything is going to be bonded. There's only 10% black-owned businesses. How can you be in the middle of East Tampa and only have 10%? Also, there's concerns in the community that this is about gentrification, that really, just like with Julian Lane Park, the city just wants to build expensive high-rises and expensive living quarters around it. If not, why didn't the city give the community choices and say, we've got $108 million to spend. Would you rather spend it on one park or spend it on all the parks in East Tampa? It's not a question about any other part of the city versus East Tampa, despite what some of the mayor's people say. It is about what was the best choice for East Tampa. Should we have rebuilt the building as the community wanted? Then we could have fixed all the other parks in East Tampa. There are a lot of places where kids are coached and they want to have a great time, but those buildings are falling apart and the roads are falling apart and people don't have housing. And we're spending an extraordinary amount of money on this. This is turned into the next Hannah Avenue. And what's happening is the administration wants to create a video in 3 years about all their accomplishments, and they're trying to rush this and pressuring us to get this done. And we shouldn't overspend the public's money and approve something that's half-baked just because the administration wants to have a video in 3 years. By the way, as I said last week, I don't understand why the administration changed the name also. The public wants Fair Oaks. The administration just come out and say, we accept what the public wanted. City council, I think, has always called it Fair Oaks, even though the administration tried to call it something else. I 100% support Fair Oaks. I 100% support the neighborhood, despite whatever misinformation will be put out there in the next week or so. But I don't support this contract. There's questions about how this contract was let. And can I just ask legal one question if they're still here? Same question. Has anybody in the administration, has the mayor, anybody in the administration side made any kind of public disclosure of conflict of interest on this contract.
Just to Vasky Legal Department, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Miranda, was your microphone on? No, mine was. Oh, okay, anybody else? Councilmember Clendenin.
You know, pretty much on the factual stuff, maybe not the commentary stuff that Councilman Carlson, I say ditto, but on the points that he tried to make. Clearly, again, just like the West Riverwalk project, this is transformational type of project. I have concerned, again, about the minority participation. I agree. This contract has to be tighter, and we have to ensure that the folks that are building these facilities reflect the amazing diversity of the city of Tampa. And I think that right now the contract is adequately, or is not adequately taking care of that element. On the financing part, I've made no secret. I've spoken with the mayor in a private meeting. I've spoken with you, Dennis, about my concern about the bonding. You know, we have I don't know what next year will be, but last year we had a little over $2 billion budget. And I know I shouldn't be negotiating from my line in the sand point, but my line in the sand is that I don't think we should be bonding more than half of the construction cost. It may say $20 million. And the rest of it, we should take it out of our budget. So I would expect that the mayor would come forward with a budget in fiscal year 25 and maybe 26 with finding existing funds within the city budget that to be able to pay for this. This is a project that did have incredible price escalation, emission creep, and so now it can't just dump on our lap and then us burden the future taxpayers of the city of Tampa because of this price escalation. You know, that being said, the same thing when, and Councilman Carlson said, you know, we've got roads to pave, we've got other needs in infrastructure. I'm going to look for this next fiscal year 25 budget to, you know, hopefully have $35 million in road repavement and road rebuilding for the city of Tampa roads. So there's going to be a lot of places in this budget, hopefully when it comes from the administration, that this will be built in. Part of our problem this last cycle is when we got the budget, you know, all the cake mix had already been put in the pan, mixed with all the ingredients, put in the cake pan, and the oven was turned on before we really start being able to slice into it. So it was difficult. We had to start moving things around from one thing to another. So again, that was my first cycle. This time, hopefully, I'll be more proactive and be able to get bend y'all's ears about expectations and how we work through this. But I hope that you are able to, again, if we get the minority participation element fixed in this contract and move forward, just know that when it comes time to bond, I'm not going to vote for bonding more. I'll meet you halfway, like 50% of that construction cost, so say $20 million. I'm not going to vote, so got to figure out another way to pay for the rest of it.
Councilmember Miranda, it was on? No? All right, Councilmember Vieira.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, when you had mentioned some issues that I also wanted to bring up on CRA, a couple of thoughts. Number one, obviously the name Fair Oaks, you know, keep it. We've spoken about that before. I think that's very, very important. This is going to be something that's a real big win for East Tampa that we can all be proud of, and I would hate to see it undermined in any way or by the name Fair Oaks. You know, I think we're all on the same page in thinking that we have dated this project, we've gotten engaged to it, and we're at the altar. We're not going to be the runaway bride or groom, right? But there are some small issues that I think should be addressed. The chairman brought up the issue of other funding sources. If we can look at that, CRA, for example. We've talked a lot about capping downtown Tampa. I don't know if there's any funds available for that after the spending that we've done for something like this. Looking at that. Other avenues within that CRA or within the CRA in the area as well. The issue of minority participation and
That must be you.
That's for you.
Sorry, I don't control that.
Sorry, okay, I'll get closer. Thank you. Thank you. The issue of minority participation, and especially with African Americans, 10%. Looking at a higher number, seeing if that's something that can come back. You know, another big project that we had before us was the fire station, and Mr. Rajero provided, along with Chief Tripp and others, and Mr. Stocco, tremendous help on that. We looked at it one time, modified it, had it come back to us, right? So maybe we could look at some of these issues, particularly the African American participation,
looking to amend that, and then just having a report to council on other funding sources to address some of those legitimate concerns, right? Because I want to see this pass. I want to see this pass for the community. This is a great win for East Tampa, something that has been decades in the making, and it's going to be transformational, not just for the hardworking families of East Tampa, those multi-generation families who helped build this city, for their kids. It's going to provide those kids opportunity. It's going to provide them recreation. It's going to give them a brighter future. And folks in Tampa who fight hard for a brighter future. Their moms and their dads and their grandparents and everybody in their families fight hard for a brighter future. And this center is going to be a partner in that. This center goes to the idea of what government is here for, in terms of helping out marginalized communities, helping to empower families to just progress. So I support this, but I want to deal with some of those narrowly tailored issues that I think a lot of council members have some legitimate concerns on. Can we look at other funding sources like CRA? Something that I think should be quickly addressed before City Council. We can address those issues. And by the way, I should have asked this yesterday to Mr. Rajero. Mr. Mulkey and I were talking about it yesterday. I said, oh, I'll call Dennis. I didn't, so my bad. And then number two is the African-American participation over that 10% threshold. Narrowly tailored issues that I think can be addressed quickly so we can move this thing forward. Thank you.
Councilmember Hurtak.
Thank you. And everyone has basically, articulated what I believe about this too. This is a great park, wonderful for the neighborhood. It was, people didn't get necessarily everything they wanted, but they got a lot of it. And basically when everybody's mostly happy, then we're in a good spot when it comes to what this park is gonna offer. It will be transformational for the community. Allow the history of the park to stay, for people to be able to have that history and then to create new memories and new histories. But the big issue is, and I specifically asked, and that's why I asked the related group about the Rome Yard project, 40% MBE. That's a lot, and that's a lot more. That's twice as much as we were told the MBE is going to be on this project, and that's unacceptable. So I would like somebody to tell me what, I believe I also heard the 30% number, but if Mr. Baird or someone else, whoever can speak to that, could explain what the percentage is currently, and then it seems really clear to us that we aren't going to accept the low 10% black business enterprise.
Good afternoon, Council. Bertha Mitchell, Equal Business Opportunity Manager. And we set a combined goal for this project of 30%. There is a 14% participation now for the black-owned businesses. That is equivalent to 117 black-owned businesses who are ready, willing, and available to go to work. We received direction from our leadership. Let's find the true status of these black-owned businesses. Yesterday and the day before, we contacted every black-owned business to make sure that they were ready, willing, and available. And most of them have responded positively, yes. We're super excited about that. We want everyone to know that equal business opportunity works for the people. We are here to ensure equality, inclusion, opportunity, and fairness. The processes that we have in place have done just that.
Thank you. Can you remind us what the percentage of MBE was for the Hannah Avenue project?
I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me, but I can get
Mr.
that.
Baird is getting up, so I believe he can answer that.
Brad Baird, Deputy Administrator of Infrastructure. It was 35% total.
35%. And what was the total cost of Hannah Avenue?
The total cost was over 100 million.
Okay, over 100 million. And the total black business enterprise percentage of that?
Yeah, the breakdown was 15% BBE and 20% SLBE.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
I think the point that I would like to make is that I think 35, if 35 was the percentage for Hannah, there's really no reason, that should be our floor from now on. And I don't see why 30% is acceptable. I'm happy to hear that we were able to increase from 10% from my meeting on Tuesday to today at 14%. I think that's wonderful. And I believe that given one more week, we could figure it out. But I'm telling you now, though, that we're struggling with this to support this if it doesn't have more participation. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Councilmember.
Thank you, Chair. EBO, first of all, I just want to say thank you for all of the work that you did contacting all of the businesses. I could start in a couple of different directions, but I'll start here. Let's just go back to the design bill. The design bill for this particular project, 70% of the participation was from Black Business Enterprise, starting with the architect, 41 years experience, right here, local guy, Howard and Associates. He designed this project. He is the architect of record, the landscape engineer, the electrical engineer. I can call their names: Drake Moss, Volt Air, Aretha Engineering, Campo Engineering, DeCargo Wilson did the structural engineering plan. Environmental engineering came from Bridgewater. The consultants, Kim Jackson, her consulting firm, KVJ Inc., was the consultant also on the project that pulled the community together, and New Age Reprographics. So Skanska out of the gate involved a lot of Black-owned businesses. It is so interesting to me that this council is saying that it's not Black enough. That is mind-blowing to me. If we're gonna have that conversation, please let me keep my thoughts together. If we're gonna have that conversation, everything needs to be more Black.
Come on now.
Not just Black projects in Black communities. Not just Black projects in Black communities. I want to be clear about that. Open your mouth and say it's not Black enough when it's over in South Tampa. Open your mouth and say it's not Black enough when it's in North Tampa. Every time you open your mouth, you should be saying it's not Black enough. In every single project, not just this one. Not only just that, if we take the scope of Hannah had several buildings, $74 million. It was a larger task. It provided for greater opportunity, and it did exist, but it wasn't there at the very beginning. It wasn't there at the very beginning. They had to work to get to that 35%. Skanska, I believe, and our city staff are making every effort to increase those numbers. The last time our staff was here, it was at 10%, and now it's at 14%. Milo from Related just stood in front of you and used the word goal, and you had no problem with it. But now we're saying goal, and now you have a problem with it. That is unacceptable. That is unacceptable. There's nothing wrong with where we are right now. It is not rushed. It is not pressed. It is not half-baked. We're ready to go right now. And that's just the bottom line. There doesn't need to be an additional week to go from 14 to 16. Or from 14 to 20. This process is being worked on. When she said that they called every single Black-owned business, those who are excited and those who are ready to go, they're ready to go. But let's be realistic. This is a government entity. You know, we don't pay people real fast. It takes a lot of processes and loopholes for people to go through. You heard Devorah stand up and say that she, even in the process of going through mentoring and getting her business ready, she had to go and take things back to improve it, to improve those processes. This project is ready to go today. 4 votes today. If you delay it anymore, you will have taken the blow of all the city staff, everything that has been done to work toward getting Fair Oaks here today, regardless of apprehensions in our community. Yes, be concerned. Address those issues, but we are not delaying for another minute. That denial will cost us funding. We will lose the momentum. We are already here. We are here today. 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 Not next week, not a month from now, not another meeting, right now. Right now. That's just the bottom line. Remember, and the last thing that I'm going to say, if we're going to talk about minority participation and being worried about that, I promise you, if I have to remind them every time a project comes before us, I will remind them about the blackness of every project every time another project becomes before us. And I'm talking about the ones that's outside of East Tampa. And I want to hear them have the same language. We deserve to be in all spaces, working, having people employed everywhere in the city of Tampa, because that is who we are. We are not just located in East Tampa. I live in Tampa Heights. I grew up in West Tampa. Black people are all over this city. Okay, you know what? I've raised my hands enough, and I hope I don't go viral. Thank you, Chair, for your time.
Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Miranda.
Don't forget the Hispanics.
Oh, yes, those are the brown people too.
Good. Let me say this.
Today.
Thank you very much. But I'm so glad that my right ear doesn't hear too well. But anyway, I'm only joking with you and to liven up a little bit. But, you know, when I was growing up there, old Cascade Park, that's all we had. That and a swimming pool. It was Bellman Heights, Jackson Heights, and this location. They had 3 little fields. I know Jackson had it, Bellman Heights had it. And we would play Little League. It wasn't Little League because it was before Little League. But each park was different than now. Each park had a director from the city. And they ran the park. And now we don't have that. So each park had a director. And that director had to teach you basketball, football, baseball, soccer, tennis, badminton, bowling, whatever it was, that person had to do it. And they had 2 really. And Cascade had 2. One for the boys, one for the young girls. And there was harmony. And you learn a lot more than sports. You learn how to communicate with people. One of the problems we have today in society, no one talks to anyone. Because you got the what? The cell phone, the computer, whatever you have in your house. You don't have to leave your house for anything. You don't even know who your neighbor is. Kids don't talk to each other. Nobody likes anybody because they don't know who they are. So we traveled, we played against African Americans, Hispanic teams, white teams, great teams, whoever. And it wasn't that we were better, we just practiced longer, right, Joe?
Yes, sir.
And you practice not to win, you practice not to lose. Because you will lose, but you practice never to lose. And it's like money is very important when you build something, and how you spend it and how you make it. However, what's more important is what are those young boys and girls there, what are they going to learn? What is the recreation department going to put in there so that they understand that after you get a certain age, you got to go work, and how you're going to get a job if you don't have an education. And it's things that go around that we all forget. It ain't about just playing. Playing is just a part of growing up. And playing, you learn how to do what? Communicate with your team. And try to beat the hell out of the other team without hurting anybody. That's how it is. So it's a big investment, but it has a lot of big rewards. Because the residual that one has in going to jail and coming back, when you're in jail, where do you go to when you come out? I'll tell you where you go to. You go right back where you came from. And your chances of going in are much greater if you went somewhere else. So we don't have that somewhere else somewhere. And I see this more than just a $34 or $35 million investment plus interest. I see this as an opportunity to have individuals that come out that have a much wider scope of life and what it's about. It ain't about just playing basketball and soccer and baseball and whatever else. It's about communication. It's about understanding somebody else's feelings. It's about how you look, how you feel. You can tell if somebody looks at, if they look at you one way, whoa, get away from that one. But these are the things that you learn that right now no one knows. You know why? You live in a vacuum. call it an apartment or a house, with no porch, air conditioned, all the amenities, and the next door neighbor, the one to your right and left, doing the same thing. So nobody speaks to each other. And I'm not a psychiatrist, but I know I can tell 5 minutes are up. But these are the things that create an entity for somebody to give somebody hope that there's something else behind that can come in and multiply and multiply. We have the lifting of a neighborhood without further investment from government. And that's what it's all about. It's about young people going out and doing things that's expected of them without them knowing about it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
All right, before I go to the second round, anybody else wish to say anything?
I
If
would
not,
like
I'll
to
go to
say
Councilmember Henderson.
I appreciate it. Mr. Mulkey, can you come back to the podium, please? Because I do need to also address the editorial that was in the Tampa Bay Times regarding the exaggeration of the $100 million that it was going to cost in terms of operational cost. Can you address the fact that that is over the long term of it really being just 2% and the exaggeration of that number? Can you just explain that for the public a little bit?
Sure, Councilwoman. Tony Mulkey, Parks and Recreation Director. Just to address that topic there, that was a wrap-in of all operating costs, the yearly budget for staffing, supplies, maintenance, things like that over a 30-year term. So that was added in to get to that $100 million number on that. The actual increase that we're looking at represents less than a 2% increase in the total Parks and Recreation budget.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So, before I ask Councilmember,
Mr. Chair.
yes.
You said 2% of the overall Parks and Recreation budget. So, yes, the problem with this city is that the administration only wants to look at capital costs instead of total costs, and the public expects us to look at total costs. And so we had the same look at Hannah Avenue. We're going to have the same look at the West River Walk, which is going to be in downtown. And we have the same look at all these projects. And so 41 million plus how much in interest, plus how much over 30 years increase in O&M costs. It's 108 million, isn't it?
I'll let the numbers guy kind of do a little bit of
I mean,
that.
I remember when we were talking about toilet to tap, and the mayor had someone send me an email saying that I was lying to the public because I talked about the total cost instead of just the capital cost. And the public expects the total cost. They deserve to know the truth about the numbers. And if it's not 108 million, if it's 90 or 100, that's fine. But the public deserves to know the truth on the numbers. Today, we're only approving 36, but you said something like 5 or 6 has already been spent. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you want to.
Good afternoon, Council. Dennis Rahera, Chief Financial Officer. If I may go to the Elmo again, just again, so we're all on the same page and talking about the same numbers. This is a summarization of what's in the approved capital improvements program right now. You see the future debt proceeds. That is more or less what we're talking about today. Even though we're not issuing any debt today, we are asking for approval of a contract approximating that amount, and we anticipate we'll pay for that contract with debt service, notwithstanding some comments that have been made this evening. You can see also, and again, this is in the capital improvements program, $1.7 million from the American Rescue Plan, federal stimulus, $1 million. I've heard the Community Redevelopment Agency for East Tampa.
Can we just talk about cost though? Sorry.
And I'm getting there. If you can just indulge me for just a second. Here's the revenues and here's the expenditures. Further to your comment, Councilman Carlson. Construction, improved project management. Again, nice and balanced.
So what's the interest on the 36 million?
And here's the next.
Sorry to make you go fast before they cut me off.
No, thank you. I appreciate the indulgence. Here you have the expenses or uses replicated. There's the 41.3 million. To answer your question, sir, a little over $28 million in interest associated with the anticipated debt. And then your total project expenses, which I think is the nearly $70 million.
So then on operating, on O&M, and this is a standard question we should be asking for all projects, it's not just this project. What's the difference? You all said it last time, the difference between what we're paying now for O&M and what we'll be paying in the future. What's the difference? what's the future O and M?
Mr. Mulkey has the operating overtime figure.
So Tony Mulkey, Parks and Recreation Director, the difference is approximately $1.3 million annually.
A year. So over 30 years, that would be about 40 million plus or minus. So we're talking somewhere over 100 million for the whole project. And that's not a project is what it is, but we need to make sure we're transparent with the public on the numbers. The other thing I should say to my colleague is that this council before Councilmember Henderson, well, I think was the first council maybe in history to reject multi-million-dollar projects because they didn't hit MBE guidelines and also black-owned business guidelines. As a result, the administration started communicating with us more effectively on that, and they brief us on it privately. If there's one we miss, let us know. There aren't any big projects in South Tampa, by the way, except for the infrastructure projects because the money is being held in downtown and Channel District. The parks in South Tampa are falling apart. The roads are falling apart, and the community in South Tampa has been very patient, making sure that we spend money throughout the city. And I think most people are in favor of spending money on Fair Oaks. The problem is that they don't want an outlandish amount of money to be spent. $5 or $18 million was a huge amount of money to spend on a park. $108 million is an excessive amount, especially when there's no bid. It's another no bid contract. And it's not acceptable because we don't know whether we should be paying 36 or 25. And the public is just not willing to accept bonding things out because it's going to cost, in this case, at least $28 million more. And they're not willing to not have bids on it. If we accepted this plan as it is and said we're going to pay go over 10 years, I think the public would be okay with it. But bonding it all out because somebody wants it to be in a video in 3 years is not acceptable. Thank you.
Councilmember Clendenin, you had signaled first, and then Councilmember Hurtak, and then Councilmember Vieira. This is the second round now.
I keep echoing what Councilman Carlson said, because if y'all listen to what he said, and the business way of looking at this. So when you're looking at this interest rate, sir, as I previously said, if we were to only bond $20 million of this and find the other $21.3 million in our existing budget through cuts or found money, how would that impact the interest rate by cutting that basically just a little bit more than half?
It will not impact the interest rate.
I'm sorry, not the interest rate, the interest we paid.
Understood.
Would it extrapolate to basically half, or is that how it?
Yeah, for purposes of discussion, yes. If you bond only half the amount, the interest will be about half.
So if we were able to find the money to pay for half of this, we'd pay half the interest, which would save us approximately $14 or $15 million.
Yes, sir. Yes, well said.
That's good. And again, I think it's the same thing. I don't think you hear any disagreements up here about the need for improvements in the construction of the park. It's just, I think generally, the uncomfortableness is how we pay for it. So we're just getting in, because the people can have your own opinions about a lot of this stuff, but you can't have your own facts. And the facts are what the facts are. I mean, what the cost of this park is, what the cost of this park, what you're presenting. I'm not disputing the facts and figures. This is what the cost of, we already know what the cost of land acquisition, because we've already done that. We know what the cost of, that we're looking at this contract, so we already know that. We kind of know what the interest rates are, and you can extrapolate what the operating costs are going to be for the next 30 years. So that's not opinion, that's just facts. I think it behooves us, again, as long as the administration is comfortable finding that extra money in the budget in 25 and 26, that we can restrict the bonding. But just understand that, again, I don't think this council should bond that entire amount. We need to cut that down to, meet it halfway, cut it down to $20 million of bonding, and everything else come out of our own hide. And I think that's a reasonable compromise. I think it's a win for East Tampa and the Fair Oaks Complex and the people that are fighting for this and deserve it. And I think it's it's a way to move forward. And I think that probably maybe you could get more support on council if you come forward with that type of a financing plan.
Could I add some clarification to those statements? Again, I always want city council to have their eyes wide open as to the decisions they're making. Approving this contract today, and I believe you said it earlier, sir, is not committing city council to debt, but it is committing city council to an expense. Correct. And again, our presumptions for the past 4 years have been that the overwhelming majority of funding for this project will be debt service. I'm not saying you have to issue debt.
I say my request is to get out of that presumption.
Understood. And I'll take that back to the administration. Of course, we'll, and I think there's going to be some more questions I'll answer, but of course, we'll look at various scenarios. I just want to make sure everybody's aware that they're committing themselves to an expense associated with this contract that will have to be funded from someplace.
Councilmember Hurtak.
Thank you. Mr. Ransom, would you mind coming up here for a moment? Thank you. You have talked to all of us. We've gotten information. We've heard from other members of the community, but I don't see them here today, so I'm coming, or now, so I'm coming to you. Are you concerned at all about, how do you feel about this 14%, and how, do you feel like we could do more? Do you feel we're on the right track? Do you feel that approving the contract today would be strong enough to go forward, or are you still concerned?
So let me just tell you.
Just say your name again for the record.
James Ransom, I'm on the board of TOBA and chair of the Economic Development Committee for TOBA. So just to remind the board, after the city signed a contract with DPR, the community has some concerns that the people who contact us are contractors. When they contact us, we try to go and get data and facts. We are a group that depends on data and facts to be well informed before we come to you. So we came to you and told you that we were concerned, but we didn't have enough information to speak to it. So we did our research and went back to find out what was happening. So in that particular situation, the concern was that there was no plan to reach a goal. There was a great goal of 35%, but there was no plan that we could see that could reach the goal. So we ended up meeting with the mayor. The mayor's team was great meetings. The mayor's staff did a great job, but the contract was signed already. So an only way to fix that issue of the lack of participation was to talk to the contractor who had the contract. So we met with people out of Atlanta, Georgia, North Carolina, Orlando, and Tampa from DPR in their offices. TOBA, we took a team and our analysts and everybody, and we asked them to relinquish 20% of their work, self-performing work and CM work on that project to make sure black-owned companies got some work. Because the promise had been East Tampa was going to benefit, the black community was going to benefit from the economics of that particular project. So we didn't go in with intent to stop the project. We went in with intent to make sure black-owned companies were able to participate and actually get paid. So DPR, to their credit, and to the city staff and their credit, there was a negotiation where they did go and they committed, unlike the gentleman said earlier from Related, they actually committed 20% of direct spend with black-owned companies. And they exceeded that amount, okay? So the concern about this contract is not about stopping the project. It's about making sure that the conditions in the contract, which talks about 30% MBE and now 10% spend with black-owned companies in the same geographic area where the project at Hannah Avenue was built. And we're not gonna rely on questioning staff in a public meeting, but we asked them to send us a list of all the companies they contacted. We're on the phone with the contractors who tell us that they have people who want to work on that project that worked on Hannah Avenue project. So we're concerned that if you sign a contract right now without getting that number changed, we've got to go meet with Skanska on April the 8th. Is it April? Yeah, April the 8th. We're going to meet with Skanska on April 8th, which is going to be after you make a decision, if you did that today, to get them to relinquish something or do something different, as opposed to you setting the bar here. So I don't want the mayor or anyone to be confused about whether, or the community to be confused about TOBA's position on Fair Oaks. We support the community. We support Fair Oaks. We want the park to be built. We want the community to have a park, what is promised to the community, but we want this $34 million in East Tampa to be spent, intentionally spent with more of a percentage for black-owned companies, just like Hannah Avenue. So the concern would be, how do we get there without slowing the project down? What can staff do to sharpen their pencils on finding that 20%? Because if you did it at Hannah Avenue, I told staff earlier, 100% of a bigger number and 100% of a smaller number. The percentage could still be the same of participation. You're still talking about construction materials. So instead of questioning that in this audience, we're going to look back at what they did, how they did it, who they were talking with, and find out if we can pretty much verify what they're talking about. Right now, we don't believe that because Hannah Avenue is real. That was real money. So we do have a concern. It's your decision. We do not want to stop this project. We don't want to stop the project. We want more black participation on the project.
Thank you, and
Somebody have a
I'll
question?
wait until the,
Pardon me?
Please, if, we can't hear up here. Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am?
I was gonna say, if, while Mr. Ransom is up, if Mr. Vieira would like to ask a question, I will.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hurtak. No, I was gonna ask you to come up, sir. So let me ask you, is there anything, because I heard Councilwoman Henderson, I'm hearing you, there's a lot of agreement there, right? I think there's 100% agreement there. Essentially, I want to find a way to support the councilwoman from this area, move this thing forward and address the concerns that I think is there any way that this can be done today?
I think it's a legal question. How in the world could the council vote to do what Councilmember Henderson wants and we want and still address this curiosity around how staff on a construction project that was $108 million and one that's $34 million, and you got percentages go from 20% to 10%, whatever they said about that, we don't buy that right now. We have to get our data on that and research on that to figure out how they do that. They found 4% somehow, that's fine, but we have a concern about that. It's East Tampa. It should be more than that, technically. So 10%, 14% is really low. The city did something transformative, historic. We support the mayor and the staff and DPR, this council, for doing something that was unprecedented and historic at Hannah Avenue in terms of spending money. It was amazing. So this particular Fair Oaks project is a great design. People like it. The community wants it. We want that. We don't want the name changed. But the participation is a mystery. And we're trying to figure out how to solve the mystery. We're good?
Yes, Councilman.
I have a question.
Wait, Councilman Vieira, do you have more?
No, so I'm going to put this out there, council, which is maybe we can let Mr. Ransom speak with staff and we come back to this and take up some items because we can reach, if I may, we can reach a yes today because I think we all want to get there today.
Well, let me ask you a question. If you because I know people don't want the project stopped. We don't want it stopped. We don't want it stopped. We don't want the project stopped, okay? That's not what Toba's talking about at all. We want more black participation in this project. If you sign this contract, if you look at 92 on the agenda right now, you're authorizing the mayor to execute a contract. Now, if you had to go back and amend the contract to deal with these numbers, that's the issue. How do you do that? How's that going to happen? So if you all are comfortable at 14%, we've done our job to bring it to your attention. If the community is okay with 14% instead of 20%, if the black community is okay with that, then hey, we've done our part. All we can do is bring it to your attention and we can walk away and say we did our part. Is that what you all want?
I have questions for you.
All right, we're good.
Mr. Ransom.
We're done, we're done.
All right. Councilmember Henderson.
Well, I do appreciate Mr. Ransom looking out for the African-American community, particularly in East Tampa. The Tampa Organization of Black Affairs is representative of all of the city of Tampa. So in this particular incident, those concerns should have been at the top of this plan. We've been talking about this for a very long time. We are here. The staff has made the effort. They're continuing to increase the effort. And there's nothing wrong with that. Toba does not need to come in and rescue this project. That's not what they need to do. They have expressed their concerns. We have heard your concerns. Staff has heard your concerns. But it's not necessary to delay another week for you to talk to them and then get the okay. We can do the okay today and move forward because you did not have those numbers on the Hannah Street project at the very beginning. They got there in the end. We can go today, and I feel that the audience and those who have been in this from the very beginning make that very clear. Today, we don't need to delay it to appease or politicize this issue any further. The community has waited long enough.
Nice, 10 seconds, may I, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please, go
Thank you,
ahead.
sir. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, my request for speaking was to do this today, not for next week, so just to clarify that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember Henderson, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Would you like to go ahead and move item number 92?
I appreciate, Chair.
Would you
thank
do the honors?
Yes, I would happily do that.
You make the motion?
Yes, I will.
Do we
I
have a-
move, I want to read the whole thing.
Go ahead, do it.
File number PRC 24-3502. I move resolution approving the design build services agreement with a guaranteed minimum price, GMP 1, for contract 22C00028, East Tampa Recreational Complex Design Build between the City of Tampa and Skanska USA Building Incorporated in the amount of $34,686,537, authorizing the mayor to execute said agreement on behalf of the City of Tampa, providing an effective date.
And you said guaranteed maximum price.
Guaranteed maximum price. I'm sorry, I thank you for the correction. I appreciate it.
Right.
So noted.
Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Vieira. Roll call vote.
Miranda,
Yes.
Carlson. Herzog.
Yes.
Clendenin,
With the caveat about the financing, yes.
Henderson,
Absolutely.
Vieira,
Yes.
Maniscalco.
Yes.
Motion carried with Carlson voting no.
All right, thank you very much.
We got it, we got it, there it is, we got it.
All right, next up, Mr. Mulkey. I believe you have item number 93.
And just to say, the reason I wanted this to come forward, and Mr. Mulkey, he wants to tell us about some,
Can you bring this up?
Mr. Mulkey was going to talk about some of the activities that they were able to add to spring break, some of the stay and play activities they were able to add, and ways we can move this forward so that we have more of this coming.
Mr. Mulkey.
Afternoon again, Council. Tony Mulkey, Director of Parks and Recreation.
Hold on a
Pleased to
second.
be.
Could y'all keep it down as you exit, because the meeting's still going on. Y'all just keep it down just a little bit for us, I appreciate it. Go ahead, sir.
Pleased to be in front of you to discuss an update to the memo that I provided in January regarding evening activities for teens. At that time, we were discussing potential curfews and other elements that we could try and keep our youth safe and off the streets. With that, TPD was able to step forward and help support our stay and play program while also expanding the program to the Police Athletic League during our spring break that we recently had. And this programming was expanded. We had over 500 visits during the week of teens that were in our centers, getting coaching, participating in activities, having fun, and getting some positive mentorship instead of being on the streets and potentially subject to negative impacts of behaviors or crime. One of the things I really wanted to point out was something that we've reinstituted since the pandemic. We were able to charter a bus and take kids from throughout the city, from the different stay and play places in our TLC program, along with the Police Athletic League, over to Orlando to visit UCF for a college visit. It's part of a broader strategy to get our youth into different scenarios where they can see what opportunities are present. This isn't going to just be a college push. It's going to be trades. It's going to be workforce development. So it's part of the strategy to try and expose our youth to opportunities, to see what's out there, to kind of create that spark for that moment where they can say, I can do this. I can go here, or take them out of their usual element and just kind of see a new experience than what they might have every day, or the resources that they might not have to be able to experience these things that we all might take for granted as being adults. I think remembering back when I was a kid, and there's that moment that kind of said, oh, I can do something more than just what I do around my neighborhood. I can explore the world and see different things. So part of this, we also included some culinary programs, and we had a top chef type of challenge between all the different centers one night. We also had a field day out at Riverfront Park downtown. So we brought kids from different neighborhoods together. which is very important. The police athletic league facilitated some daytime programming on Saturday, going to a boxing gym in Ybor. It's this coordinated effort to, one, have law enforcement interact with our youth, to have youth interact with each other from different neighborhoods, and to see more of the world and get that experience. So it's part of implementing a broader strategy to support not only the teens, but the younger generations and the families. That's what we hope to do, is create our centers to be the catalyst, the incubator for workforce development, support for the family, nutrition, physical and mental healthy well-being. So this is something that we're really passionate about. We're throwing more resources towards it with the support of TPD, the expansion with PAL, and we plan on implementing more and more of those steps that are outlined in that memo.
I just wanted to say thank you so much. This went above and beyond what I was expecting that we were going to be able to do on such a short notice. It's just amazing. So I am hoping that from this, either you can bring back more of those programs that we used to have, or think about what it's going to take to expand them, because I would love to see in the budget for next year, or from you, an estimate for how much it will cost to expand these programs, to have our Stay and Play be open later. I think it's a great place to start for throughout the year, and so if we could do that, I would really appreciate it. Just as we are starting to think about next year's budget, like what would that take? What's the cost? Reaching out to the community a little bit, maybe doing a couple, probably, I think 4 is a really good number. We were talking about for the garbage rate increase, about doing community meetings in all 4 parts of the city. I think that might be beneficial here, to hear from the community, both the youth and the parents, about what other types of things we could do to create a really robust program. And of course, I don't expect it to be perfect and fully done out by October, but what can we do going forward? What's the next step, and how can we build upon it, and what would it take from us financially to do that? So I would just really love to hear that from you in the future, and I just want to say thank you for all the work that you're doing on this.
Well, thank you, and I think our staff is to credit for this. Our programmers, they're very creative. They have a lot of resources. You mentioned the budget, and one of the things I want to highlight is I want to lean on community partnerships. I want to lean on that in-kind services, because we have financial institutions that want to come in and teach financial literacy. We have those chefs, culinary programs that we can engage with. There's a wealth of resources in Tampa, and I would love to engage with all of them.
Councilwoman Henderson.
Thank you, Pro Tem. I really, Mr. Mulkey, appreciate this presentation so much. Great things happen in Parks and Rec. You get great leaders and that become wonderful citizens out of parks. And so to expose them on college tours is just another element that we're not required to do, but clearly your programmers have gone above and beyond because of it. I'm so glad that you talked about public-private partnerships, because even that extension, really, that's the muscle that we need to build as a city. The public should not rely on us to be the resolution for everything. The public-private partnership is a key element, especially when it comes to our youth. And I know a lot of companies can get behind that, so the impact can be even greater. But this is a wonderful start. I appreciate your report.
Thank you.
Councilmember Miranda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mulkey, since you're here, I had to put any pressure on you, but the good people at the basketball courts at Interbay YMCA on Himes, they've been down for some period of time, and the parents tell me they gotta put on the lights at night so they can play basketball. If you could appreciate, if you can anyway expedite that a little sooner than later, I appreciate it very much.
Sure thing. And we've been engaged with them on the renewal of their permit, and spoke with Mr. Michelini regarding this. And we have it in the pipeline. It's just going through the purchasing policy.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much if you can do something.
Thank you very much. All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, next is item number 94. 94, we have a memo from Ms. Nguyen. She is here. And Mr. Brody. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, good afternoon, Council. Sia Nguyen, Administrator of Neighborhood and Community Affairs. On February 6th, we asked for a continuance to come back to discuss with you, because we wanted the opportunity to meet with the NAACP about their contract. And I'm going to let, and that did occur. We had several meetings, and I'll let our legal team, Carl Brody, talk a little bit more about what that entailed.
Afternoon, Carl Brody, Legal Department. Yes, we had the opportunity, Ms. Wynn and I had the opportunity to go over to the NAACP building and meet with Ms. Lewis. We pulled out a draft contract and lined through it and made changes that she was interested in. We updated the agreement so that it would be more consistent with the same exact agreement that she has with Hillsborough County. The benefit to that is that then to comply with performance measures, you just have to do it once instead of having two sets of performance measures to satisfy the cities and the counties. Now, the way the contract is written, complying with one complies with both. So we left that with her. She currently has it with her attorneys to review. They'll get back with us, and then we should be able to have a final binding contract for this current year for the NAACP to sign off on and to comply with, so that we can follow through and complete the agreement.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Yes, ma'am, Councilmember Hurtak.
Does this include the 2023 as well?
This would not include 22-23 fiscal year. And the reason it doesn't is because, at least right now, what we have is a services agreement. And a services agreement means that you provide us a service in return for payment. So we have to do that as it is current. So for this year, 23-24, they can provide the services to be able to receive the payment. 2022-23, we can't do a services agreement to provide payment for that. There might be other options, but for what we have right now and what's consistent with what they've already signed off on with other jurisdictions, we can only do it for this current fiscal year.
Now, that money was sitting there and probably still sitting there. What will happen to it?
That's a revenue and finance question, actually. I don't know how they'll designate those funds, but we do know that we had the funds to cover this year. That's why we want to get this agreement done in time for them to be able to provide the service that's required to get the payment.
Councilwoman Hurtak, let me get back with you about what happens to that money if it's not used. I don't know that, but I can get back with you on an answer with that.
And if I remember correctly, it was $100,000.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Clendenin.
So the contract would be basically run from 10/1/23 to 10/1/24, is that correct?
That's correct.
So this will fulfill that obligation for that fiscal year?
Correct.
Okay, and then we'll start fresh again on 10/1/24 to 10/1/25. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Carlson.
One of the concerns was that they were worried that their contract had reporting or auditing requirements in it that were not present in the contracts of other similar nonprofits. Can you address that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. We did look, and there are some inconsistencies, but that's something that we're working on, and we're going to have consistent agreements for the 24-25 fiscal year. We have made these changes because, first, they're required by state law. There are certain state law requirements we had to put in the agreements, and we've been cycling those in. There's some of the older agreements might not have those same provisions, those same requirements. So that's how you kind of run into those type of problems. Because, agreements change over time, change depending on the specific service that's being provided, and that's how you get some of the distinctions. But we are looking to standardize all agreements, at least agreements in this similar space.
Yeah, I would just ask that you all treat them equitably. There have been some political attacks against them that are defamatory and are somewhat related to that. And so I just want to make sure that politics is not entering into any kind of contractual agreements with any nonprofit. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. O'Hara was up.
Yes.
He popped up briefly. I don't know what happened to him. Oh, there he is again.
I thought it was just
okay.
a vision.
So I think he's going to be able to answer that question.
Go ahead, sir. Mr. O'Hara.
Yes, thank you, Council. Dennis Rajero, Chief Financial Officer. There was a question about the NAACP funding of $100,000.
Yes, for 2023, that fiscal year, what happens to that money now?
That will roll to carry forward to fund balance. We'll carry
Okay.
carry that funding forward into the current fiscal year.
So then that basically means we have $100,000 to do something with.
It does.
Okay.
Again, it goes, the professional phrasing here, goes into the big pot. But yes, it was unspent last year, and it carries forward into the current year.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Clinton.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if this is in order, but I would like to make a motion, because again, with this inequity that we've heard about in these contracts, and so obviously there was a problem in that fiscal year 23, I'd like to make a motion to pay the NAACP the $100,000 that we were contracted for in fiscal year 23.
Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Carlson. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am?
And I'm sorry, I had one more question. You all were talking about the change of contracts or how your agreements, some of them are old, so they are not updated every year?
It depends on the term of the agreement. Every agreement isn't just for 1 year. It depends on just what's the nature of the agreement, what's negotiated. There's several factors to come in to determine how long the term is going to be.
And is that something that you're working on standardizing by any chance?
Yes, ma'am, we are, to get everyone on the same playing field.
Okay.
So that where there may be there are some that have been dated, and we're getting them. In fact, the NAACP's agreement was one of the first ones that we started standardizing so that all of them will look and feel and sound alike.
Will they be annual then, all of them? Or will you have a limit to the number of years before you need to renew that agreement?
Now, I don't know about the annual, because some of that depends on what the current terms are in those agreements. I want to say they very well may be, but I don't want to speak out of turn for all of those agreements.
I would love to know about that going forward, because I
Okay.
think, is it a 5-year or a 3-year or 1 year? And maybe we can standardize the 5 years, and maybe we can standardize the 3 years and the 1 year, so that everybody who has a 5-year agreement, they basically have similar terms. Just again, equity, and then as we move forward, just, updating and improving.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
thanks.
Thank you very much. For items 95, 96, and 97, we requested staff not be here, so can I just get a motion to receive and file the memos? Motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Next up is
Mr.
item number
Chairman.
98.
Mr. Chairman, just for the purposes of the record, I believe 97.
97 was
correct,
continued to
is
May
continued to
16th.
May 16th.
Oh, okay.
So,
let
I
me
move to receive and file on 95 and 96, and
continue item
It was
number
already
96.
continued.
and we've already continued 16, so
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Mr. Brody, you're up. This is regarding the pending cemetery issues. Yes, sir.
Correct. Yes, thank you again, Carl Brody, Legal Department. This is an update from, I believe, last April, when we discussed the same issue involving the Italian Club and the potential for there to be lost cemetery on that property. We've had discussions with the Italian Club regarding whether they've done a ground penetrating radar scan. We don't have specific proof that one has been done, actually. So we're working with them along the way to make a determination of if it's been done, and if it's been done, if they could provide us the results of it. So that's kind of where we are now. I think we've already talked enough times about the legalities of being able to require any kind of further action by the Italian Club based on the fact that they are private property and we don't have authority to control their use of the property. So I'm here really, if you have any questions about moving forward or where we're at otherwise.
So before I go to Councilmember Vieira, I may have mentioned this before, but about 5 years ago, I spoke with a gentleman who was the architect for the mausoleum that is right there on the Italian Club cemetery property, and it's facing that empty, that grassy area that has been used for parking.
Correct.
And what he told me, and he passed away 4 years ago, was that when they broke ground for that mausoleum, that they didn't find any remains. Now that is this man's opinion, who has since passed away, and all the documents that he has, his wife has since passed away, and I don't know where it's at. It may have been thrown out. I don't know. That was the one contact that I had there. He was a longtime family friend. I trust him and I believe him. But there's a question of, I believe the number was 1,200 individuals, people of this community that were buried there. I don't know if they're there. I don't know if they've been relocated. There's a retention pond just to the north of that. I know that the Armwood family, Blanche Armwood, is buried there, which the high school, of course, I mean, a legendary educator that passed away 1940, I believe. There's a lot of African-American history there. There's a lot of Italian history there of the first wave of Italian and Sicilian immigrants that came, to Ybor City and everything. They're in that cemetery. You can go back to burials from the 1800s. So there are a lot of questions. Again, I only got the opinion of one gentleman. Yes, he was the architect. Yes, there's pictures of him with a hard hat on. They're breaking ground to build that mausoleum. But from what he told me, they did not find any remains. But that mausoleum is just to the west of this area. And that area in question has been used for parking. They used to have events called Picnic with the Past. And it would be, it would raise money for the Italian Club or for the Italian Club Cemetery, and people would be invited to enjoy a meal. And I don't know if they knew or they questioned but again, it's privately owned.
It is.
I don't know if we would have the authority as a council to say, please share that with us. I mean, at the very least, please don't use that as parking. Please, there is a historic marker, and this was brought about from Councilmember Vieira, and is her name Angela, who was here this morning? Mm-hmm. Yes, she was very integral in that. I don't know, but I think it's our duty to, protect and preserve the memory of these individuals that, may be buried there, may have been buried there, and if so, where were they relocated to? That's a question. Councilmember Vieira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I wanted to acknowledge, I see Ms. Copeland Miller and Ms. Henderson here from the Cemetery Society, and we appreciate all their work, obviously. So, and Mr. Brody, thank you. We've spoken on this a lot of times, and with Ms. Alderman, who Chairman Maniscalco mentioned, and you've done a lot of hard work on this, and we appreciate it. So, I had actually invited the Italian Club leadership, a representative, to come to today's meeting to get updates on this. They were unfortunately unable to make it to this particular meeting, unfortunately, but they have requested to present at the May 2nd meeting on their findings, because even though we lack the legal ability to compel someone on private property to do something, we can work as a government entity that has moral duties, right? With the appropriate parties. So I was going to, whenever all the discussion on this is finished, I was actually going to motion that the Italian Club present at the May 2nd meeting at a time certain after lunch on their findings, so that we can, get this issue out into the open. Again, we may lack the power to compel, but we can have a dialogue and see what has been done, so that we can, work with our community partners on making sure that things are good.
We have a motion from Councilmember Vieira. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Clendenin. Any discussion? I think that's great. We'd like to know. I understand it's private, but these are people's family members, and it's very important. Yes, sir?
If I may, and I wanted to make sure for part of the motion, it's that at time certain after lunch.
Okay.
Still second.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Next up, Councilmember Henderson, you wish to recuse yourself, and you have the form to file, correct?
I do. I am recusing myself from item number 99. To abstain, to avoid the appearance of a potential conflict of interest where my relative is associated with this case.
All right. We get a motion. We have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Vieira. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I'm here for item number 99 on your agenda, and just for the public's edification, my name is Ursula Richardson. I'm the Chief Assistant City Attorney in the Legal Department, and I basically have been with your litigation practice group for the last 19 years. I've been a lawyer for the last 29 years. But I've spent the last 19 years of my career defending the city and sometimes city employees in any number of litigation situations. So that's just a background. What we have is a first request, because as you recall, there was a ordinance that you passed back in December. Mr. Shelby sent you a copy of that ordinance on Monday to just refresh your recollection about what that ordinance does. And this would be a first request. Now, I've spoken with Mr. Shelby about kind of the fact that this is first means that this won't be the last time you're going to have this discussion. Presumably, there may be other litigation and employees may come to seek reimbursement. So it's important as you go through this process today to think about any future requests. Just essentially, this is new. So you should think about how you want this process to look. The memorandum that I drafted for you and that was put into the system essentially is just some guidance. I'm also here to provide that guidance for you to answer any questions, but just some guidance for how this process might look. Again, some of the things that I put in the memorandum as far as things you might consider as far as the reasonableness of fees. Those are just the things that I could think about, but you all may have about 10 other ideas of other things that you would also consider important factors in determining what you want to do with those fees. As it sits right now, the law that's applicable to the request that's being made before you today, or the request from Mr. Goods or former Councilman Goods, is essentially the common law. So that is in the memorandum in Section 3. Florida statute, which is Florida Statute 111.07, which is also in Section 3 of that memorandum. And then your actual code. Your code, if you take a look at it, actually incorporates most of the language that is either contained in the common law, which I put some of those cases. Common law just means law that was decided by courts. Some of that is in the memorandum, as well as the actual statute, which means sometime after the courts decided law, the legislature decided it was a good idea to put something in stone as far as what the law is and how to guide these particular discussions about reimbursement or defense of government employees under certain circumstances. 111.07, essentially, just to give an overview for the public, it authorizes, so it doesn't mandate, it authorizes a government. So any government in the state of Florida is authorized to provide a defense to an employee, an officer, servant, agent, whatever the term may be. They're authorized to do that. And what it says in this statute is that you're authorized up front to front the cost of a defense and resources associated with a lawsuit if this criteria is met. If you read the statute as well as your own ordinance, there's an unless. So basically, you're authorized to do X, Y, or Z unless. And so that's one of the considerations that you have before you today. It goes on to say that basically if a person is, if the unless is met, that you're not authorized to use government funds for these particular purposes. So you can either upfront find on the front end that these particular parameters are met and then you use government funds for these purposes, or you deny it on the front end, and if the person prevails on the back end, they come back and they seek reimbursement. That's essentially what 111.07 says. In the questions that you're being asked today, and those are the things that I've set out in the memorandum, the first question would be whether Mr. Goose is entitled to reimbursement.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Forgive me for interrupting. Marty Shelby, City Council Attorney. They have the memo in front of them. I believe they've read that, and I believe that this presentation, I don't want to have to get into a debate with you. You and I spoke about it. And we both agreed that we would not debate it, so I prefer that we don't, and I'll let...
I'm not debating, I'm just doing my presentation. If you don't want me to present, then I won't do that.
I think we should just go to the vote. We've seen, I've gotten my own legal counsel on this, and my own legal counsel disagrees with the city attorney's view that common law applies here. It's the state statute and our code. And so I think for the sake of the claimant, I would rather that we keep this conversation as short as possible so that we can move forward with this difficult situation.
Well, just to make it clear, the request is actually made under 111.07. If you look at Mr. Barak's letter, he's saying he's making this request under 111.07. and the statute says what it says. I'm here to just provide guidance.
No, we understand. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Councilmember Carlson.
I would like to, based on the judge's ruling that Mr. Goods was acting in his role as city council, as a city council member, and pursuant to ordinance number 2023-167 for reimbursement of attorney's fees and costs associated with the lawsuit, caption LS through her parent, HS and HS individually versus Orlando Goods, case number 22-CA-4051. Motion. I motion to reimburse Mr. Goods for his legal fees. You may read. Motion that City Council finds the litigation in court case number 22-CA-4051 arose out of or in connection with the performance of official duties of former council member Orlando Goods, finds it serves a public purpose, and finds reimbursement of his legal expenses as a prevailing party reasonable in the amount as submitted. There's evidence that's fully submitted in the judge's rulings that back up these points. So I'm basing my recommendation on what the judge has ruled.
Do we have a second? Second. We have a second from Councilmember Clendenin. Councilmember Clendenin was going to speak first, and then Councilmember Vieira.
Yes, for those of you that don't know, I spent nearly 32 years as an air traffic controller working for the Federal Aviation Administration, which is the federal government, Department of Transportation, FAA. And I will tell you that if I didn't have the full faith and protection of the U.S. government standing behind me every time I opened my mouth to give control instructions, I'd be paralyzed in fear to do my job. And I think it's really in the best interest of the citizens of Tampa that the city of Tampa stand behind us elected officials in issues like this on the front end, not the back end, but on the front end. Because otherwise you've paralyzed your elected officials to take action. And as outrageous as some of the allegations are, I want to key in here that this went into the judicial process outside of city hands, into a judge's hands, and they found that it didn't rise to a level that would provide those payments to the complainant about this. And again, nobody's contesting that some of the alleged statements, and I think that was key because they were all alleged, nothing's been proven. The alleged statements that were made, they're all outrageous, and it's shock value when you read those things. But what we're dealing with is, we're dealing with an elected official that in his work performs duties, and if next time it could be any one of us, as you've seen some disagreements here on the dais between some personalities and some heated tensions. Any one of us could rise to this level, and I would expect that, and now we've kind of cleaned this up with that last ordinance we passed, but that the city would stand behind me and defend me if in these situations.
We have comments from Councilmember Vieira.
Thank you. And to Ms. Richardson, I wanted to make sure, because I want to make sure that we get all the legal guidance. I know there's a difference of opinion with Mr. Shelby. Is there any other guidance that you wish to give us? I just want to make sure as an attorney that we are equipped with all the information. I'm going to talk about this, but I just wanted to make sure as a courtesy to you, ma'am.
The only thing that I was going to say is that Mr. Barak's letter says he's asking for the fees under 111.07, and the statute is very clear that that you're authorized to reimburse unless. What I was also going to say is that I think that there is an issue about whether you're weighing things or you're acting as a judge and jury. That's not what the function is today. Essentially, you could use some of the comment or language that's actually in the order, is what I was going to suggest, to use those things, because what Judge Moe had to do was assume that the facts are true. That's what happens when you file a lawsuit and then somebody files a motion to dismiss. When the judge is looking at it, she doesn't look at whether or not who's right or wrong. She doesn't look at who's credible or not. She has to assume what those things are, that they are true, and then make a decision about whether or not those things that she has assumed to be true, whether or not they meet the test to move forward beyond that motion to dismiss. And so some of the things I was going to point out to you when you're looking at what she said, page 10 of her order, she summed up certain things that way. Page 12 of her order, she also summed up essentially that the comments were offensive, inappropriate, hurtful, etc. Assuming them to be true, they might be objectionable and offensive. she didn't find that they met the test for going forward on an intentional infliction of emotional distress. But what I believe the statute clearly lays out is that you have to look at the unless. And so basically using just her words without you all having to debate it or anything, using her words, is that enough to decide that it meets that test of bad faith, malicious purpose, wanton and willful disregard? Because that's what the statute says, that you're only authorized, you as a government are only authorized if it meets that hurdle, if you can get past that hurdle. And you don't need to, debate or anything. Just use Judge Moe's order and her words to determine whether or not it meets that test.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and was it pertinent to the remarks I'm about to make, or I want to make sure? Again,
Well, it depends what you say. I mean, I have a response to that I think is warranted in this case.
I think we should hear his legal opinion.
I'm fine, of course.
I guess my question, and I'm going to make inquiry of Ms. Richardson. Is the Thornburg case, the Florida Supreme Court case from 1990, still valid law?
The Thornburg case acknowledges that there's room for looking at things under the common law, and there's room for looking at things under the statute. The statute applies in one particular circumstance, and common law applies in another circumstance. However, all I'm saying is we don't even need to debate that. Look at what the judge has already said, see if it meets that thing, and if you think it meets that thing, then you move on to determine whether or not the fees were reasonable.
Doesn't the Thornburg case say that the common law is, and it uses these words exactly, independent of statute?
Yeah, it is.
It is. So it's not a hybrid. And to my knowledge, and you and I had this discussion, there is no case that says that common law has to be a hybrid with the Florida statute.
What it says is that under that particular circumstance, the statute did not basically get rid of the common law. It actually takes into some concepts of the common law. But the legislature, just like in instances of sovereign immunity, has specifically set forth a process for determining whether or not it's appropriate to use government money. For instance, when I represent an employee and they're sued in their individual capacity, that employee is entitled to some type of defense unless. So this isn't a new test. This 111.07 incorporates the exact same language as the sovereign immunity statute, saying that it's the employer, not the employee, unless. So essentially, and I'm saying that you do have to look at the unless, and it's not just the job function. Thornburg is one of the cases that specifically says they look to the factual allegations to determine whether or not either theory applied, common law or the statute, and you can seek reimbursement under both theories. However, Mr. Barak's letter specifically says he is seeking reimbursement under the statute.
Is counsel bound to Mr. Barak's letter?
That's what he's asking for it under, and it's not a court. He's saying he's asking for it, and we gave you the test under both. However, what I will say is you can consider the common law, but you cannot ignore the statute. You cannot ignore what's been written down.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Vieira.
Thank you, and I just wanted to have the attorneys just have their time to say, state their piece, et cetera. So I want to talk about my vote and my rationale for my vote. I always tell people in this, especially in mediations, I go, there are things in life that are black and white, and then there's things that are gray. And this is an issue, I think, where we have a lot of gray. I will be voting for this, and I want to explain as to why I will, including a lot of misconceptions that exist on the litigation history of this case that I think are very important. The reason, and I'll get to this, why I'm voting yes, and I'll try to be as succinct and quick as I can, is the defamation count. There was a defamation count, and Judge Moe said in relevant part in her order, oh dear Lord, my handwriting,
A lawyer that can't read his own
I know, okay, well, in other words, that the comments, there you go. The City of Tampa Charter gives Councilman Goods an official purpose for making the statements about an employee's performance. That was found during the order. There's a number of allegations that are in the intentional affliction, emotional distress count. Then you have, I believe it was defamation, if I recall correctly. All you need to have, as I interpret this, is one connection to
that purpose, however you want to define it, right, that will trigger the fees. Given the amount, I think it's good to go forward. There are a couple of things that I want to state. Councilman Clendenin had talked about the conduct that was alleged and it being egregious, et cetera, et cetera. By voting forward for this, nobody affirms, my opinion, affirms or supports that conduct. I've made statements on it, other council members have made statements on it, et cetera. This is a legal analysis that is a narrowly tailored issue, very narrowly tailored, especially on the defamation count as far as I see it. What I said before, and I'm going to say again, which is the individual who brought the original accusations forward, and God knows there was a political firestorm that went out there, right? We should all salute her for her standing up when other people tell her to sit down, right? I always maintain that I will continue to do so. Something that's very, very important too is that when the city settled the $200,000 claim that was brought forward, a pre-suit claim without a lawsuit, and I'll talk about that briefly as well, you know, it would have been great to have Councilman Goods released in that. Things happen behind closed doors in mediation. We don't know what happened, right? But that would have been perfection because we're here today. But again, there's numerous reasons as to why things happen. I do want to state, and Ms. Richardson and I do not practice in employment law or sexual harassment law, but when you have a sexual harassment cause of action, the cause of action is against the employer, not the employee. Therefore, and please correct me if I'm wrong, when this employee settled with the city of Tampa for the traditional sexual harassment causes of action, she relinquished those traditional causes of action and then was left with intentional infliction of emotional distress, which I'll get into in just a little bit, and defamation, which have a very, very high standard. The cause of action was not against the employee, but rather against the employer. I say that because I read a lot, people going, well, the city settled and the case was dismissed. Totally different cases. So totally different cases. I think that's very important for everyone to talk about. Intentional infliction of emotional distress, that which was pursued in this lawsuit was dismissed. The standard for an intentional infliction of emotional distress typically involves touching, and it is something that has got to be beyond, and I don't want to recite case law because I don't know what it is, the elements off my head, but it's essentially beyond outrageous, right? And there's a very, very high standard for that. An investigation was done before this by the Trenum Kemker law firm, a law firm that I don't think anyone's going to question their character, their reputation, their professionalism, et cetera. This case was resolved without a trial. The $200,000 case, I think it's like 98, 99% of cases resolved without a trial. This case was resolved without a lawsuit. I do a lot of pre-suit cases as an attorney that are resolved without a lawsuit. The judge's ruling, as far as I read it, again, indicates that the charter gave former Councilman Goods an official purpose in making the statements. There are issues with the lawsuit that I've long had a lot of trouble with on an individual basis. This is not the time to talk about them. I will not get into it because that's going to open up a hornet's nest, but I've had a lot of challenges with this lawsuit. That's my personal opinion. But so with the 30 seconds that I have, again, I wanted to make these statements because it is important that we define why we're voting for something, because on a legal basis, we have to make sure that we define it to a particular conduct that could be related to the purpose, regardless of how you interpret it. I think that's important for purposes of future precedent, especially on a case like this. So I will be voting yes for the aforementioned reasons. Thank you.
Councilmember Miranda.
I can only say I read something, and I don't have it in front of me, about another former council member back in the 70s or 80s, I forget which it was, and it was, and I'm not going to mention that name because she's no longer with us. She passed away some time back, and I don't want to do that. And I think they said no for the reason what you said about the judge and so forth and so on. So in this case, nothing against the city council member in the past, Mr. Goods, not personally to him or anybody else, but I'm going to hold to what happened in the city that they said to that council member no also.
We have a more discussion?
Yeah, just clarification of that, just so we have that issue, because I remember that issue, and it was because they actually took an official city council vote and voted in their self-interest.
Oh,
So it was a very different case.
And I just want to reiterate what Councilmember Vieira said also. It's not our role today to judge whether I'm talking about him, not you. But it's not our position today to judge whether certain things were said or not said. All we are doing is deciding whether he was acting in his position as a city council member. The judge has already ruled that, so following the judge's ruling, I think we're obligated to pay. And so I made the motion.
Councilmember Carlson with the motion, second Councilmember Clendenin, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried with Henderson absent at vote.
No, abstaining from voting.
Oh, she abstained, I'm sorry
Yes,
about
she
that.
filed the form.
Motion carried with Henderson abstaining from vote and Miranda voting no.
That is correct. All right, remember, item 101, Councilman Vieira, you had that big PowerPoint and the public hearing. I'm kidding. Item number 100, Mr. Shelby.
You want me to start with?
Yes, please. I just want to state that I did prepare the memo regarding that, and I turn to Councilmember Carlson.
I have a motion that I worked on with Marty. What we did is we asked the charter says that there's a residency requirement, and whether any of you are in favor or against the residency requirement, it's the current law that was reaffirmed by citizens when they amended it a couple years ago. And so with the law the way it is, the question is how do we codify it into the law of the city? And Marty checked, it doesn't exist anywhere. So in order to create some rules around how this is codified, I'll just throw out this motion. A motion to ask, all I'm gonna do is ask the city attorney to come back. I motion to ask the city attorney and city council attorney to return on May 2nd with a draft ordinance to codify section 6.01 and 6.03 of the charter, of the city charter, that will A, define proof of residency as homesteaded property, voter registration, and/or affidavit testifying the individual primarily lives in the city of Tampa, at the city of Tampa address. B, requiring notice within 30 days of any address changes. C, establishing a penalty for making false statements resulting in immediate termination and prohibition from returning to the city of Tampa as an employer consultant for a period of 1 year following termination. So the idea here is just to define what it means, give some notice. There's no definition right now by the charter of what it means. It seems to me reasonable that if somebody has a homesteaded property and they have a voter registration, that's where they live. And if they happen to rent another place or live part-time in another place, that's different from where their homesteaded property is. And then C just says if somebody lies, and I think we're all against somebody not telling the truth, we presume everybody's telling the truth, but if somebody lies after signing that sworn affidavit, then they would be terminated automatically.
Would you have a second to the motion?
Second, I mean, if I may, it's,
This is for the legal department to come back.
Yeah,
with
just
the
to come
actual
back.
ordinance. So that's
And
the
if you all
ordinance.
have edits or whatever, let them know if you
No,
want
I
to.
think you bring up very good points. No, I'll be supporting it. Councilmember Vieira with the second, and then any other discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
And what was the date?
I'm gonna
May?
vote aye now, but I don't know if support it. I like to have the best and the brightest, no matter where you live at.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Councilman Miranda. I'll vote in favor of this now, but
Yeah.
I also kind of want to, I understand this has been dealt with. They tried to get through, like, charter change, but it failed, or there was some discussion about this. And I mean, the city of Tampa is such a weird geographical area. You're in and you're out, and you're in and you're out, and it's
The only thing this is saying is if we have it, it applies rules.
Yeah,
You can make a separate motion to get rid of it, but that's a charter amendment.
that's a charter amendment, right? Okay.
So this is for May 2nd, you said?
Yeah.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Councilman Vieira, I didn't do anything with this. I know it's just a calendar, but you weren't here this morning. I just want to wait for you. This is the memorandum that you had sent out requesting the changes pertaining to firefighter of the quarter commendations.
yes, sir.
So if there's no discussion, just move to receive and file?
Yes, sir, move to receive and file, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I do believe this requires council to adopt the tentative calendar.
Okay, so let's do two votes. Move to receive and file the memo sent by Councilmember Vieira, he's made the motion. Councilmember Vieira, do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Clendenin, all in favor? Aye. And then, for council to adopt the tentative 2024-2025, city council calendar for the period March 7, 2024 to July 31st, 2025. Is there a motion?
Move or second?
Motion from Councilmember Vieira, second from Councilmember Miranda, all in favor? Aye. Yes, sir, Mr. Shelby?
Now, Councilman Vieira, can I just ask, the memo that was received and filed, did that make a specific request relative to the calendar?
I believe it did.
Then I think maybe you should ask, or you should make that as a motion to address the calendar. You know, you could just be specific and just reference the motion, but just so it's an action item that you're actually changing the calendar.
Yes, sir, and thank you for that, and thank you for Brandon for putting this in my folder. I do motion that the March 26, 2024 memo that I sent out regarding Tampa Fire Rescue be adopted in terms of the commendation request.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilman Vieira, second from Councilman Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? It's time for new business. Councilmember Miranda.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to present a commendation to Emily Peak, a student at Cambridge Christian Elementary, and Lillian Hurd, a student at the Academy of Holy Names, for the medal winners of the 2023-2024 USS Tampa Post 5 American Legion Oratorical Contest. The medals that they have received reflect a keen interest in the appreciation of principles and values outlined in the Constitution of the United States and their awareness of the responsibilities incumbent to each citizen to exercise these rights. In conjunction with this, I would like to present a combination of two American Heritage young lady girls, Abby Kolaski and Charlotte Luria, who have earned their citizenship and government badges to their knowledge and understanding of civic responsibility. I would like to present these commendations at the beginning of the evening of April the 18th at 5:01. We've done this many times before.
We have a motion from Councilmember Miranda, second from Councilmember Vieira. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? At the April 8th, you said April 18th evening?
Yes, sir.
I don't see it on this calendar. I see, Mr. Shelby?
No, April 18th is a regular session. The workshop is on the 25th as an evening session, and earlier than that, the second.
But the April 25th is going to be canceled, correct, Mr. Shelby?
Oh, yes, that's right, I have that motion.
So April 11th is your only option.
Maybe it's a typo.
Is April 11th? Okay.
Well, they put here the 18th, I'll make it April the 11th.
All right. Motion from Councilmember Miranda, second from Councilmember Vieira. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Anything else, sir?
One more. I've had a couple of requests the last week or so. What's happening is that court enforcement doing an excellent job in doing what they can. However, they're citing at least one of these two that I know for a remodeling job on a house that she bought that she never touched. The seller is the one that did the remodeling, as I understand it. And I wanted to see if we asked the legal department to draw something to the fact that we ought to go after the seller, not the buyer. The buyer didn't do anything. The buyer just bought the house. And as they're going through the system where nothing is recorded, and when you have something that goes on, it's recorded in Cindy Stewart's record in the county, so that its record's there when the attorneys do a study of when they're making the closing, that comes up. It's not coming up, and when they find that, they're going after the buyer. The buyer didn't do it, the seller did. So that's where we're at. So I'm just pressing it to the legal department, see if they could come up with an answer.
Are you asking for a formal report, or are you
Yes,
just putting it
just a
up?
formal report.
When would you like it, sir?
Well, give it a month.
No, let me look here into May.
I just want to clear it up. I don't want somebody to get charged with something they've never done.
How about May 16th?
That's fine, that's good, great.
All right. We have May 16th under staff reports. Motion from Councilmember Miranda, second from Councilmember Vieira. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anything else, sir?
That's it, sir.
Councilmember Vieira?
Yes, sir. I was speaking with Carl Brody. I seem to be taking up a lot of his time, and he always does a great job on a code of conduct for certified contractors with the city of Tampa. Before I make that, and I'm speaking about this publicly because I promised somebody I'd make it today, I want to speak to some of our city attorneys about that before I make the motion, because I want to make sure I have all of the requisite knowledge for a proper motion. So I just say that publicly because of somebody I spoke to, so it should be made next week once I speak to the attorneys on that. The only motions I have here is for a commendation I've been requested by Ultimate Medical Academy to do a commendation on June 20th before Tampa City Council.
We have a motion from Councilmember Vieira. We have a second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Anything else, sir?
Yes. You know what? This one involves Councilwoman Henderson's district, so I'll wait until she's here for that. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Clendenin.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for the planning staff to provide a report with final language for the January 2024 Land Development Code Amendment Cycle at the April 5th, 2024 regular council session.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anything else?
Yeah, I want to just, April 5th, the day before my birthday, just in case you guys are planning on buying presents.
Oh, you're an Aries.
Oh, well, then we have another typo then. So let's say April 4th, and if there's a problem, we'll fix it.
Yeah. Can you push it further? Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
As a general rule,
Yeah.
at this point in time,
April
next week's
18th is the
agenda's
next
paid.
regular session.
Mr. Heberlein, if you're listening, would you please report to council chambers?
All right, well, can we come back to you then?
I actually want to say something else. I'm really excited that we're moving forward on the budget analyst position. As we all know, we're going to do the interviews. We're going to bring them on board. Budget season is going to be here before you know it. Pause for dramatic effect. Can you fix this date on the motion, please? This is not the right date.
Just scratch it out and write it.
Why, we don't know what do they want?
Yeah, that was, I believe, the date that was requested out of the email from planning commission. Let me.
Okay, very. So a budget season is here before you know it, as we've insinuated several times in this meeting today. I think it behooves us, last year was my first bite at this Apple budget, and I've learned a lot about that. And again, as I said earlier in the day, how we got the budget, the cake was already mixed and put in the cake pan, and the oven was turned on before you get it, so you don't have an opportunity really to do stuff with it. I think we should start really bantering about what our budget priorities are. As I threw out today, I want to see the paving and repaving budget increase significantly to $35 million. I want to see those type of infrastructure programs in the city of Tampa to reflect the needs of the people that are currently living in the city of Tampa. I would encourage all of us now to start putting that hat on and start thinking of as we move forward towards this budget, so we're not caught like we were last year, kind of on our heels, and have a better product this year for the city of Tampa.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and I'm going to make that motion for planning staff to provide a report with final language for the January. We can't do April 4th. It's too early.
It's too late.
It's got to be April 18th.
Could they do a walk-on?
For what?
Well, this is the planning
Yeah,
commission.
It is the planning commission. The planning commission should give you enough time to be able to put it on the agenda.
That's right. They would plan it.
Land Development Code Amendment Cycle. I mean,
Something,
is there an objection to putting it on the 4th?
yes, I have an objection.
See?
And the clerk has an objection.
All right, let's do April 18th because they're right down the
Okay.
street.
Motion for planning staff to provide a report with final language for the January 2024 Land Development Code Amendment Cycle at the April 18th regular council session.
Under staff reports?
It's under staff reports.
We have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Before I go to Councilmember Hurtak, Councilman Vieira, you had a motion you were waiting for Councilmember Henderson?
Yes, thank you. I was going to say that. So Councilwoman Henderson, through wearing my CRA hat, we're working on the restoration of this World War I African American Soldiers Memorial Park, and it came up during discussions on having a historical marker there to kind of make the community aware of what is there. And I didn't want to make that, ma'am, because that's in your district without you being here. Just making sure. Thank you, ma'am. So I do make a motion for that, for a historical marker over at Memorial Cemetery. For I guess the city staff would begin working with Historical Marker Committee, and we can have that come back. Let's have it come back. I mean, because that takes a while. July, the first week of July, just after July 4th.
You're looking at July 18th.
There you go.
We have a motion from Councilman Vieira, second from Councilmember Henderson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Councilmember Hurtak.
Thank you, and this actually came from Ms. Feely. I move to have Deputy Administrator Feely appear the first week of each month, starting May 2nd, 2024, to provide a brief update on the Land Development Code reform process.
We have a great motion from Councilmember Hurtak.
Because she loves us, she really
Yes.
loves us? Okay.
Second from Councilmember Henderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And she just, it's going to be going fast, so that was her idea. So, and then I don't know if Mr. Shelby, if you're going to talk about this. If not, I have something to say.
That it's coming up next week?
Oh, it is okay. Then
Yeah,
never
I
mind.
want to look at it.
Well,
It's coming up next week.
Okay, well, what I wanted to say about this, and this is the, the staff report regarding the improvement to the efficiency of meetings.
And that will be posted, by the way.
Yes, but.
On base.
It will be on base, but at this point, there are a lot of, this is basically a grouping of the ideas that every council member had.
Yes.
So I would highly recommend,
More than that, actually.
well, and more than that, and the clerk and others, but some of the ideas are contradictory to one another. So I think it would be great if we all went through, well, tomorrow's a little soon, especially we don't have anything, but if we could get that, if you could get your changes or your cross, I don't like this idea, I like this idea, let's add this. If you have any comments, any cross-offs, anything, if we could get that to Mr. Shelby by Monday, maybe we could have a much more, a quicker conversation.
Forgive me, but I don't think so.
Oh, okay, never mind.
And let me tell you why, and I want you to know, I want to read the first paragraph of the memo, because I think it explains to you. It says, "The following are suggestions for improvement to the efficiency of Tampa City Council meetings. This is a listing of various proposals to be considered individually. Some might contradict others, as many are based on the suggestions that have been received. It is my recommendation, it is recommended that as each is considered, a motion is made by a council member who supports incorporating it into the rules of procedure. I have tried for a long time to build consensus and unanimous consent of this council. It is not doable. I will point to...
Say it ain't so.
Well, I will point to you just under, let's say, for instance, just to point illustration, under public... And by the way, I want to just take, and I'll say this next week, I want to thank each of you for who took the time to meet with me and your staff and the city staff and the legal department and the clerk's office, particularly the chair for his leadership. Lisa Edwards sat down with me and Suling Lucas for 2 hours to begin this. So for public comment, let me read number 5 and number 6. Number 5, keep phone-in option for general public comment. Item number 6, remove phone-in option for general public comment.
I agree.
Why? Because
I strongly agree.
Because those are two different viewpoints that have been made to, brought to this list. This is going to be just as your rules of procedure. They're your rules, but they are put into place by a majority vote of city council. So if a vote of 4 puts it on a resolution, that resolution has to be read and passed twice for it to take effect, and then it becomes the rules of council. So in that context, what I'm going to say is you are not going to get unanimous consent from city council because there are contradictory things that actually came out of my conversations with city council, with legislative aides, with the city clerk, with the city attorney's office, and city staff.
So, though, what I'm going to say is that this is a 5-page document with bullet points for each item. 70 items, and just letting you all know that we have 13 staff reports and unfinished business. I just don't know how long this is going to take, but I just wanted to ask everyone to really be prepared.
And the other thing that I do ask, and we've continued it to next week because I asked for a full council to be present, because this is going to require a vote of 4, and ultimately when it comes back as a resolution, all compiled however you choose or not choose, what you want to have in your rules is going to have to come back as a resolution for 2 readings. So depending on how soon you act, it could take effect as soon as the first meeting in May. Otherwise, it would take place after that.
Can I make a suggestion, and maybe I'm just being optimistic? It seems like the folks that really, because you take the opinion people of the 7 politicians up here out of the equation, and you get to the subject matter experts. We've got a legal person, we have the clerk's office, and then maybe a couple of our legislative aides to work together to par down a proposal. No?
I don't think it's doable. These are not their rules. These are your rules.
But I'm just saying.
And the worst part is, or the best part is, you're going to have to self-police.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, it's the thing. I don't write the rules that make me go 65 miles an hour, but I still well, maybe sometimes I comply. I don't know. I guess I'm just not. If somebody tells me these are the rules, I'm just gonna say, okay, those are the rules.
Thing is, I will tell you that they can come back and you still might not get 4 votes for it.
That's true, okay. Okay, never, disregard, never mind. Can I, take the privilege back for that motion? Because I see Stephen Benson walked into the room, referenced that planning commission motion. Stephen, is that what you're here for?
Yes, Stephen Benson, City Planning. The text amendment package is currently being routed for the 4th. My understanding is that we would be able to request it as an addendum. I did want to point out, though, that since the Planning Commission only meets once a month, we won't just get bumped to their next meeting. It won't get bumped a week, it'll get bumped a month if it misses the 4th, so.
May I ask why it hasn't been, well, let me ask you this, will it be uploaded tomorrow for on-base?
I cannot speak to that, but I understand that to be the intent.
And does anybody know whether council will authorize a walk-on after the agenda is prepared?
I'm not aware of that.
Mayor, this is Suing Lucas, Deputy City Clerk. Just to let you all know, the draft agenda has already gone out because the city is closed tomorrow.
That's right, tomorrow is a holiday.
Yeah.
So, and this is a very significant matter, and for sake of transparency and fairness and notice to the public, by the way, there's something in here with regard to, it's a motion, as a matter of fact, is it on next week's agenda? Give me a second. Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney, to present a resolution. I'm going to address this for council's consideration that will require agenda items to be automatically continued for a week if the full presentation and backup materials are not placed in the online public database as of 5 p.m. the Friday before scheduled meeting. That's a motion that is made by council that's put on the agenda to discuss. That is actually, there's a reference to that in this document. So the question is, a walk-on, and this, by the way, is probably one of the more significant things that this city council is going to be voting on in the course of its duties. So I will just say, council, I'm very concerned that somebody made an executive decision to walk on something of this magnitude at this point in time, without city council's knowledge at the last minute, the day before a legal holiday.
This is true.
I mean, the 18th, and it's, unless you've got some other thing compelling, the 18th is what they would be.
It's the pleasure of council. These are the actual text amendments that run with what we presented to you already in February. So it's
Right.
not new content.
No, I understand.
It's just the actual language. So
I understand, but let's just go, it'll be the 18th.
18th it is.
Okay.
All right, we have just to
Sorry, Steve.
clarify, a motion from Councilmember Clendenin for the Planning Commission to present on April 18th under staff reports, as you
Yes,
said.
correct.
We have a second?
I think we already voted on that, didn't we?
Yeah, but
Okay.
just since he's here. Second, anybody? Second? Second from Councilmember Moran, all in favor?
Aye.
I just wanted to be crystal clear. Anybody opposed? Anything else, Councilmember Hurtak? If not, I'll go to Councilmember Carlson.
This morning, Andy Scaglione talked about this loophole, which you all probably heard a lot of complaints about over the years, which is that people, when they're applying for permits, will cite a parking lease, but then we're told that multiple organizations are using the same place for a lease because they can easily cancel them. And so I just have this motion to ask the city attorney to report on motion to ask the city attorney to report on June 20th to modify section 27-283.6 to require that terms of any parking leases to be considered by the legal department shall be no less than 5 years in duration and contain no early termination clause. In addition, the obligation must be assigned to any successor. Such agreement shall be annexed to the approved site plan, and a listing of all approved leases shall be maintained. Failure to comply with this section shall be a violation of this chapter.
We have a motion from Councilmember Carlson. Do we have a second?
She's second.
Councilmember Henderson, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay. Yes, Mr. Shelby.
Yes, question. This is the kind of thing that would normally go through land development. It is a code change, and I'm wondering why you would asking the legal department to do this.
Who do you want me to ask?
I think what it sounds like what you want to do is do you want to have a report prior to them to come back with language? Because what they're going to come back is it would have to make probably the next cycle. So it's not something, and they have to go through the process.
So who do you want me to, what do you want me to change?
I think it would be land development.
So I'm just changing city attorney to land development.
We have a motion.
And did you pick a date for that to come back?
June 20th.
June 20th, thank you.
We have a motion for June 20th from Councilmember Carlson with the second from Councilmember Henderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Can I ask one more thing?
Sure.
Sorry to bring this up, but Councilmember Henderson, you mentioned earlier that you think you're getting paid less than the rest of us, and
Human Resources called Darlene, and the amount that Dennis Herrero had on the screen was high. It was not correct.
okay, I just want to make sure
So we
that,
all make the same thing.
I just want to make sure you're paid fairly. Okay, thank
We
you.
all make the same thing, except for one person.
Right. Yep.
That person makes less
Why do you make less, Sheriff?
because he chooses to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a,
I don't take the $200, $300 a month, whatever.
What do we get $200 a month for?
it's part of the office account for certain expenses.
That's not salary. That's not new, that's put historically.
No. Anyways,
Maybe council might want to
Oh, that
inquire
is- that
offline
covers our-
as to
Yes.
what that is, why that is.
Councilmember Henderson, do you have?
I don't have anything, sir.
Well, I guess I don't have anything. Do you have anything, Mr. Shelby?
Yes, I do. It was brought to my attention that the evening of April 25th has no alcoholic beverage cases and no comprehensive plan amendments. Therefore, it's being requested that the city council remove the evening meeting scheduled for April 25th from your calendar.
Oh, darn.
We have a motion from Councilmember Miranda. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor?
Aye.
Can I get a motion to receive and file?
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Miranda, second from Councilmember Henderson. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.
I'm gonna miss you guys when I'm in.